All right, welcome. Friends and haters, trolls and supporters, I guess, sort of encompasses everybody. It's night two of two. The first presidential debate split up because of so many candidates into two nights. Tonight is the night with most of the frontrunners. Joe Biden is in tonight's debate, Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, who I am hoping to see substance from, and we'll talk about that. Are we going to see any policy from Pete Buttigieg in detail beyond just generalities, which has been a sort of weak point of the Buttigieg campaign so far, in my completely honest and frank opinion? So, a few things to talk about. Number one, we have removed yesterday's live stream coverage from YouTube. People emailing me saying, "David, did it get taken down?" It did not get taken down. We were told about a lot of different YouTubers getting 90-day bans from live streaming with copyright strikes for videos that included the NBC live stream from yesterday, in addition to their commentary. And I was going back and forth with Sam Cedar and with others today, and I made the decision to preemptively take the thing down. And it's a disappointing thing because it had like 100,000 views. It was actually monetized. It was generating revenue for us. It had some funny moments. It was a great thing, but the risk was just too great, and we have relatively little or no power to push back against these things unless we want to go through, sometimes a multi-week appeal process. And by that point, we haven't been able to stream for weeks and weeks at a time. So we took the video down, and I don't know, we didn't delete it. We just took it off. We made it private for the time being. So I don't know, maybe it'll go back up, and I don't even know what we're going to do with the archive of today's show. I actually expect that there may be even more viewers tonight in general for this debate than yesterday, because yesterday's debate generated a lot of interest, and a lot of the big players are in tonight. To rehash my sense of and by the way, I'll just go straight over to the shot that we will be using during the debate, and you'll see me, and you'll see super chats, which you can start sending in, and you'll see the debate itself, and you'll see the coupon code that is available for membership. I thought that yesterday the top three winners of the debate were not in necessarily any particular order: Elizabeth Warren, Bill de Blasio, and Julian Castro. Now, Castro and de Blasio are not people that I've said are my top contenders. This is just sort of as objective an analysis as possible of my sense of how they did. I like Elizabeth Warren more than the other two. De Blasio, I thought, did very well in the debate, although I am not becoming a de Blasio supporter. And actually, I really did like Julian Castro, not only because of how he performed, but also a lot of the things he said. I mean, the guy has really deep knowledge of issues that are important to him, immigration being one of them. And somebody said, what about a Warren Castro ticket? And it's way too early to even talk about that. But I would much rather Julian Castro as a running mate than several of the other candidates that we saw last night. Many people last night they really need to go. I mean, I don't know how much longer they're going to stay in if they don't start polling better. I got a bunch of emails from people saying, "David, did you see the poll on suchandsuch.com where Tulsi dominated, or a poll where supposedly it was Cory Booker who won the debate?" We are not going to know the real effect of the debate, last night's and tonight's, until the middle of next week, more than likely. I'm guessing tomorrow and over the weekend, pollsters will start actually doing properly sampled polls that take into account how people believe the debates went. And I don't think we're going to know anything about who is actually going to benefit, the winners and losers from last night, until next week, other than I think Beto lost big, 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 big. And to address so I talked earlier today and yesterday about how I thought Beto's speaking of Spanish was a total disaster. And a few people wrote to me and they said, "David, in an era of anti-intellectualism and pseudo-intellectualism, shouldn't we be encouraging candidates to speak more than one language?" Remember when the right made fun of John Kerry because he spoke French, and we rightly said, no, it's good to have presidents that are educated and worldly. I completely agree. My problem is not that Beto O'Rourke speaks some Spanish, or that he values being able to communicate with Latino voters who speak Spanish in their language. I think that's all great. The problem is if someone says to you, "What do you think the top marginal tax rate should be?" and you go into este economía and nuestro democracia, which are not even grammatically correct, something is very wrong in that it seems like pandering, because it is. You're not answering the question. So I have no problem with people speaking other languages with peace and love. Speak as many languages as you want. And I think that's great. The criticism was that the way it was done was, it didn't seem genuine. It seemed pre-calculated, and there was just nothing good about it. Okay, let's see. What am I going to be paying attention to today? A few different things. And I decided, yet people told me that yesterday I was taking notes on my laptop below for the commentary for today's show. And a bunch of people said it was my typing was distracting. I mean, I know half the people in the chat will probably say they didn't notice any typing. But today I've decided to bring out one of my various yellow pads, and I'm going to be writing on paper, just to appease people who didn't like the typing. So a few things that I'm going to be looking for tonight, and then I'm going to get to super chats, and then we're only about 12 minutes away from the start of this thing. Number one, how does the rest of the field tonight treat Joe Biden? Okay, because Biden is both one of the more centrist candidates, and according to every poll, basically, maybe one shows him within the margin of error of second place, basically the front runner right now. So is he going to be attacked hard by the other people on the stage? And if so, is it by the people who really have nothing to lose, the zeros and ones, as I call them, or are the other front runners going to attack Joe Biden, like Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg or whoever else? That's number one. Number two, how much does Bernie Sanders take credit for the mainstreaming of ideas that certainly lots of people on the stage will pay lip service to? Will Bernie Sanders actually say, I love that all of you have come around to X policy. I was talking about it in 2016 when none of you were in favor of it. I'm interested in seeing that. Number three, is Pete Buttigieg going to give us substance? Now, the problem with these debates is that with 10 people on the stage, 1-minute answers and 30-second rebuttals, only some candidates even get to give a minute answer. Only some candidates even get to rebut each answer. It is not an environment that actually encourages any depth, and a lot of candidates, as a result, can get away with saying nothing, talking for 75 seconds and saying nothing and getting cut off by the moderators. So hopefully we will get a sense of whether Pete Buttigieg has some more specific policy ideas that he can articulate in a serious and productive way. And then are there any breakouts? Like for me yesterday, I was not thinking of Bill de Blasio at all in part one. I was barely thinking about Julian Castro at all in part one. But they both impressed me in terms of their debate performance. De Blasio still has no chance, and Castro has almost no chance. But I'm going to be interested in following that. And Andrew Yang, the only presidential candidate. Well, I guess I've interviewed Marianne Williamson, and she's being allowed on the stage. But she's, anyway. I'm interested to see how Andrew Yang does. And I actually do believe that he is someone that, as people become aware of him, he really could see a boost to his poll numbers in the next week. If he doesn't, he's probably done as well. There's a lot of people that in a week probably will be able to safely get out of this thing, and we'll see who those are in just a few days. So let's see, what else? Memberships. Yes, we had the most amazing thing happen yesterday. During the live stream yesterday, new members were coming in roughly every few minutes. Okay, every few minutes there was a new member, to the point where I couldn't even keep up. This morning I woke up and I looked. I have a folder, all member-related emails, payments, cancellations, new subscriptions. Anytime anything comes in, it's ushered into a separate Gmail folder. And I had 1,200 unread messages related to membership. Some were just payments that were due on the 27th of the month, but a lot of new subscriptions yesterday. Let's do it again. Let's do it again today. And another thing that I am thinking of is yesterday I accidentally, if you're looking at the live chat on the side over, I guess over there on most screens, or maybe down there on mobile, it gets going so fast. There's 2,500 people watching right now. Yesterday when we had 7,300, it was moving so quickly that it almost became useless. Now, I don't want to censor people. It's great for people to be able to type their comments in. But I accidentally turned on a feature called Only Channel Members May Send Messages. And when I did it, only people who have hit the join button down below or over there, depending where you're watching, only channel members were allowed to comment. And it got so quiet and peaceful. And a whole bunch of our paid subscribers on the YouTube channel got in touch and said, David, that was amazing. And as soon as I turned it on, all sorts of new YouTube members started popping up. So what I may do tonight, I don't know if it'll be the first half hour. Maybe we'll do it at the end of the first hour of the debate. Maybe we will do like a 15 or 30-minute period where only YouTube channel subscribers will be allowed to comment in the chat. We'll be allowed to chat, and we'll see what happens. I mean, even just by me mentioning it, Corey Harrison now has signed up, as you can see over there. So anyway, that's something I'm thinking of trying. And what else? I don't know what else. I guess that's mostly it. Let's take a look at some of the super chats. And I made the super chat a little bit bigger, and hopefully everybody can see it okay. Let's see what we had come in today. I want to find the beginning for this evening. It might have been, wow, a lot of super chats already in. Okay, Alicia Wright, PhD, sent us a $2 super chat, which is very nice. Rognut SSBM says, how you doing, my guy? I'm doing well, and I am ready for tonight. Brian Farron, Miami Dolphins Analytics, says, I'm excited to see Gillibrand tonight, my #1 choice. I forgot she was even debating, and she should probably exit the race very, very soon. Jimmy from Philly says, Trump 2020, it's inevitable. Okay. Jimmy hates progressives, loves Trump, and he contributes to the show. So if Jimmy does it, we should all be able to do it. Jay Bryan and Pei-Hwa Anderson say, Andrew Yang is who we need. Adam Barnes says, Yang, Bernie, Warren, or Pete, I ain't picky. Sabrina Safar says, detailed thoughts on response to Gabbard. Listen, people who are in the Gabbard cult loved it. They thought she won. I think that she was thrown a bone by the boneheadedness of Tim Ryan. If Tim Ryan doesn't start talking about the Taliban doing 9/11, Tulsi has zero good moments. Her first answer was just crazy. I mean, it was, I don't even know what the question was, but her answer was, I was in the military. So I think she was tied for 5th yesterday. I think she didn't do particularly well, but she didn't have any major gaffes, and she might get a point or two, maybe, which would probably encourage her supporters to say she's going to win. But much ado about nothing, big picture. Quinix Yashiyama says, our Bernie is going to steamroll everyone tonight. Thomas Milner says, UBI is far better than a $15 minimum wage. Daniel Krieger says, David, did you notice Tulsi call out Saudi Arabia for sponsoring terrorism for a split second before getting cut off? This is extremely important. I did hear her say Saudi Arabia, yes. Val McClinchy, you're the best, David. Will you open the phones tonight? I might. If we have overwhelming membership support, I might do it. It's been a tiring few days. It really has. Okay, it looks like, what is going on here? I guess the candidates are standing at the stage. Andrew Yang, third, Marianne Williamson on the left. We're minutes from the debate. And let's see, is anything happening?
He is the front runner here, and he is the person that everyone's going to be gunning for.
No, I agree. And I think
okay, we'll get to it as soon as it starts. But I want to keep doing super chats for now. Weeznaz with the top super chat of the evening, but not of all time, $99.99. I used to be a Republican and voted for Trump. You changed me. Thank you very much, Weeznaz. I appreciate that. Mick Mundy, can't wait for Yang to bring that U.S. national debate team experience he's mentioned. Very hopeful for tonight. Picturing My Love says, should also live stream on Twitch. Can't trust YouTube. Yeah, but you can't simul stream on Twitch and YouTube is the problem. David, one of my various yellow pads Pac-Man says experience music. Weeznaz with a second $99.99 super chat. I miss Pat, and don't let YouTube get you down. Kathy H with a super chat. Tom Langford says, a bit random, but I love your t-shirt, David. Thank you. Devin Young says, oh, I lost what Devin Young said. Where is Devin Young? Devin Young is there. I want to have Weeznaz money. All right, let me turn this up because it seems like we are close.
She has the challenge of both introducing herself to the American public for folks who haven't seen her, and also, putting that.
All right, I'll just keep it low for now. A couple new members, Corey Harrison and Three Arcs. Origins and Tall Tale says, hello, excited for tonight. Nice shirt. The shirt is popular. Nick Newcomb and Alessio Shostak are new members. Matt H just graduated from high school 30 minutes ago and sends $1.99. Congratulations, Matt. Joe Romero, sends a super chat. Andrew Lincourt, do it again. It keeps the MAGA losers out, if nothing else. Oh, the members-only chat stream. KG has signed up. Dylan Tyler, David, would you recommend any Republican political commentators that you respect and feel are level-headed and honest? I like hearing both sides. You know I wouldn't, Dylan. I wouldn't. I'm sure you can find them. I don't need to be recommending any of them. Kaiba Corp HQ says, feel the burn, feel the burn. Alice McCain sends $1. Rory Drew is a new member. Ian Mulrennan sends $2. Thanks for being awesome, David. Luke Choice is a new member. Let's see here. The Death Star says, who do you think will win, David? Gotta watch. I don't know. Grapple Scrapple says, my top 3 goes Bernie, Yang, Warren. What's yours? Those are really my favorite 3 candidates. Not necessarily in any particular order. We're getting close here. I'm keeping an eye on it. Project Sanity says, Trump 2020 is inevitable if progressives continue to ignore facts being disclosed over at Declassified. Why do you continue to suppress these facts? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what on earth that's about. Okay, just scrolled down. I'm trying to keep up with it here. Karem Omurtag sends a super chat. Alice McCain is a new member. Kate Gari says, to simul-stream YouTube and Twitch, you need restream. Yes, but Twitch does not allow you to do it. I believe you can't earn money on Twitch if you're doing that. Kaylee Brackens, Bernie is the only one who will make a change. Mark Turi is a new member. Mike K loves the show. FYI, you are showing up in my YouTube newsfeed. That is good news. David Bitto says, taking a shot every time a candidate dunks on Biden might be passed out before this is over. You could be passed out by 9:20 p.m. Eastern time, depending on how this goes. Number 420 Pencil says, support independent media. Michael Berg, DC, is a new member. Oh, and it scrolled down. I'm not doing that on purpose. Just when a bunch of things come in at once, it'll scroll down violently. Rob Not Bob sends $1. Devin Young sends $1. Jacobus is a new member. PDX Pro Courier Tips and Tricks says, when will we see Pat guest host a show? Very good question. Brian Howard, Pete for the hashtag Boom Shakalaka, brings back memories of playing NBA Jam when I was 10. Joe Rollins says, Yang Gang is welcome. Looking forward to your supporting Bernie. Remember, even Yang supported Bernie in 2020. Negative income tax is not GMI. All right, it's time. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, that's me getting a spam call. I apologize about that. Nothing has frozen. It just seems as though...
Good evening, I'm Lester Holt, and welcome to night 2 of the first Democratic debate in the 2020 race for president.
Good evening, I'm Savannah Guthrie. Last night we heard from 10 candidates, and now 10 more take the stage.
And again tonight we'll be joined in the questioning by our colleagues, Jose Diaz-Balart, Chuck Todd, and Rachel Maddow.
The candidates are in position, so let's get started.
Tonight, round 2, Colorado Senator Michael Bennet, former Vice President Joe Biden, South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, California Senator Kamala Harris, former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, California Congressman Eric Swalwell, author Marianne Williamson,
should have been out months
former
ago.
Tech executive Andrew Yang.
All right, that's it.
From NBC News, Decision 2020, the Democratic Candidates Debate. Live from the Adrian Arst Performing Arts Center in Miami, Florida.
Here we go. 7,300 concurrent live streamers was the top yesterday. Let's see if we can beat it today.
Spirited audience here tonight in the Arts Center and across America tonight. We continue this spirited debate about the future of the country, how to tackle our most pressing problems, and getting to the heart of the biggest issues in this Democratic primary.
Tonight we're going to talk about health care, immigration. We're also going to dive into the economy, jobs, climate change as well.
And some quick rules of the road before we begin, and they may sound familiar. 20 candidates qualified for this first debate. As we said, we heard from 10 last night, and we'll hear from 10 more tonight. The breakdown for each night was selected at random. The candidates will have 60 seconds to answer, 30
Williamson looks
seconds for any
stunned.
follow-ups.
And because of the large field of candidates, not every person is going to be able to weigh in on every topic. But over the course of the next 2 hours, we will hear from everyone.
And we love our audience, but we'd like to ask them to keep their reactions to a minimum, and we're not going to hold back in making sure the candidates stick to time. So with that business taken care of, let's get to it. And we're going to start today with Senator Sanders. Good evening to you. You've called for big new government benefits like universal health care and free college. In a recent interview, you said you suspected that Americans would be, quote, delighted to pay more taxes for things like that. My question to you is, will taxes go up for the middle class in a Sanders administration? And if so, how do you sell that to voters?
Softball.
Well, you're quite right. We have a new vision for America. And at a time when we have 3 people in this country owning more wealth than the bottom half of America, while 500,000 people are sleeping out on the streets today, we think it is time for change, real change. And by that I mean that health care, in my view, is a human right. And we have got to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. Under that system, by the way, vast majority of the people in this country will be paying significantly less for health care than they are right now. I believe that education is the future for this country. And that is why I believe that we must make public colleges and universities tuition-free and eliminate student debt. And we do that by placing a tax on Wall Street.
Tax on Wall Street's popular.
Every proposal that I have brought forth is fully paid for.
Senator Sanders, I'll give you 10 seconds just to answer the very direct question. Will you raise taxes for the middle class in a Sanders administration?
People who have health care under Medicare for all will have no premiums, no deductibles, no co-payments, no out-of-pocket expenses. Yes, they will pay more in taxes, but less in health care for what they get.
Thank you, Senator.
That's key, because that doesn't often get said.
Senator Bennett, we're going to get to everybody, I promise, but let me just, Senator Biden, promise everybody's going to get in here, promise.
Was that Hickenlooper
Vice
trying to
President
talk?
Biden. Senator Sanders, as you know, has been calling for a revolution. Recently, in remarks to a group of wealthy donors, as you were speaking about the problem of income inequality in this country, you said, we shouldn't, quote, demonize the rich. You said, nobody has to be punished. No one's standard of living would change. Nothing would fundamentally change. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that is, look, Donald Trump thinks Wall Street built America. Ordinary middle-class Americans build America. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joe, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's being able to look your kid in the eye and say everything's going to be okay. Too many people who are in the middle class and poor have at the bottom fall out under this proposal.
Joe's feeling low energy.
What I'm saying is that we've got to be straightforward. We have to make sure we understand that to return dignity to the middle class, they have to have insurance that is covered and they can afford it. They have to make sure that we are in a situation where there's continuing education and they're able to pay for it. And they have to make sure that they're able to breathe air that is clean and they have water that they can drink. Look, Donald Trump has put us in a horrible situation. We do have enormous income inequality. And the one thing I agree on is we can make massive cuts in the $1.6 trillion in tax loopholes out there, and I would be going about eliminating Donald Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy.
Vice President Biden, thank you. Senator Harris. There's a lot of talk in this primary about new government benefits, such as student loan cancellation, free college, health care, and more. Do you think that Democrats have a responsibility to explain how they will pay for every proposal they make along those lines?
Well, let me tell you something. I hear that question, but where was that question when the Republicans and Donald Trump passed a tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations in this country?
Okay.
Contributing at least $1 trillion to the debt of America, which middle-class families will pay for one way or another. Working families need support and need to be lifted up. And frankly, this economy is not working for working people. For too long, the rules have been written in the favor of the people who have the most and not in favor of the people who work the most, which is why I am proposing that we change the tax code. So for every family that is making less than $100,000 a year, they will receive a tax credit that they can collect up to $500 a month, which will make all the difference between those families being able to get through the end of the month with dignity and with support or not. And on day one, I will repeal that tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America.
All right, coming out strong.
Thank you.
With a little confused.
Let me get you in on this. You've warned that Democrats will lose in 2020 if they embrace socialism, as you put it. You were booed at the California Democratic Convention when you said that.
Because he's an idiot.
Only one candidate on this stage, Senator Sanders, identifies himself as a Democratic
Oh,
socialist.
no.
What are the policies or positions of your opponents that you think are veering towards socialism?
This is good.
Well, I think that the bottom line is if we don't clearly define that we are not socialists, the Republicans are going to come at us every way they can and call us socialists.
No, they'll call us socialists either way.
If you look at the Green New Deal, which I admire the sense of urgency and how important it is to do climate change. I'm a scientist, but we can't promise every American a government job. If you want to get universal health care coverage, I believe that health care is a right and not a privilege. But you can't expect to eliminate private insurance for 180 million people, many of whom don't want to give it up. In Colorado, we brought businesses and nonprofits
totally. I mean,
together.
he should quit right now. He should end his campaign right now.
Universal health care coverage. We were the first state in America to bring the environmental community and the oil and gas industry to aggressively address methane emissions. And we were also the first place to expand reproductive rights on a scale basis, and we reduced teen pregnancy by 54%. We've done the big progressive things that people said couldn't be done. I've done what pretty much everyone else up here is still talking about doing.
Governor, thank you. Senator Sanders, I'll give you a chance to weigh in here. What is your response to those who say nominating a socialist would re-elect Donald Trump?
Okay.
Well, I think the responses at the polls, last poll I saw had us 10 points ahead of Donald Trump, because the American people understand that Trump is a phony, that Trump is a pathological liar and a racist, and that he lied to the American people during his campaign.
This is not Bernie's best answer,
He said he was going to stand up for
say.
working families. Well, President Trump, you're not standing up for working families when you try to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have, and that 83% of your tax benefits go to the top 1%. That's how we beat Trump. We expose him for the fraud
I think this
that
is
he
a
is.
mistake. Should have said we're not talking about socialism. We're talking about countries like Norway, Sweden, etc.
Is confusing because the truth is there's a big difference between capitalism on the one hand and greed on the other. And so all the things that we're trying to change is when companies care more about profits when they do about people. So if you're talking about ending gun violence, it's the greed of the NRA and the gun manufacturers that make any progress impossible. It's the greed of the insurance companies and the drug companies when we want to try to get health care as a right and not a privilege. So there need not be disagreement in the party because, in truth, we want healthy capitalism.
Thank you.
We don't want corrupted capitalism.
Thank you. I want to be fair to all the candidates. Thank you. Senator Bennett.
Okay.
You have said
Andrew Yang
it's
trying to
possible
raise
to
his
write
hand.
policy proposals that have no basis in reality. You might as well call them candy. Were you referring to any candidate or proposal in particular when you said that?
Was that directed to me?
Yes, that was your quote.
That sounded like me. Thank you.
It was you.
I appreciate it. Well, look, first of all,
Listen, I have no
agree
business
completely
being
with
here and have no
Bernie about what
recollection
the
of what I'd
fundamental
say.
challenge we're facing as a country is 40 years of no economic growth for 90% of the American people. 160,000 families in the top 0.1% have the same wealth as the bottom 90%, and we've got the worst income inequality that we've had in 100 years. Where I disagree is on his solution on Medicare for all. You know, I have proposed getting to universal health care, which we need to do. It is a right. Health care is a right. We need to get to universal health care. I believe the way to do that is by finishing the work we started with Obamacare and creating a public option that every family and every person in America can make a choice. for their family about whether they want a public option, which for them would be like having Medicare for all, or whether they want to keep their private insurance. I believe we will get there much more quickly if we do that.
But wait,
Bernie, if I could just finish, Bernie mentioned that the taxes that we would have to pay, because of those taxes, Vermont rejected Medicare for all.
That's not why that's so important. That's a lie.
Senator Sidney,
Is this the guy from Best in Show? Does anybody know?
Senator, but for the moment, my colleague wants to continue the question.
I wrote the part in Senator Sanders' bill. I wrote the part in Senator Sanders' bill that is the transition, which merges what the two senators said. Because the truth is, if you have a buy-in over a 4 or 5 year period, you move us to single payer more quickly.
Senator, we will get to this. We will get to this.
I understand.
Before we do, I want to say hello and good evening, buenas noches to Mayor Buttigieg.
Buenas noches, gracias de invitarnos.
Oh, it's happening again.
Many of your colleagues on stage support free college. You do not. Why not?
Tell us in Spanish,
Sure.
please.
So college affordability is personal for us. Chasten and I have 6-figure student debt. I believe in reducing student debt. It's logical to me that if you can refinance your house, you ought to be able to refinance your student debt. I also believe in free college for low and middle income students for whom cost could be a barrier. I just don't believe it makes sense to ask working class families to subsidize even the children of billionaires. I think the children of the wealthiest Americans can pay at least a little bit of tuition. And while I want tuition costs to go down, I don't think we can buy down every last penny for them. Now, there's something else that doesn't get talked about in the college affordability debate. Yes, it needs to be more affordable in this country to go to college. It also needs to be more affordable in this country to not go to college. You should be able to live well, afford rent, be generous to your church and Little League, whether you went to college or not. That's one of many reasons we need to raise the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour.
Jose, I've got $100,000 in student loan debt myself.
Let me get to you.
You can't count on the people who've been in government for the last 30 years who were around when this problem was created to be the ones to solve it. It's going to be the next generation, the 40 million of us who can't start a family, can't take a good idea and start a business, and can't buy our first home. This is the generation that's going to be able to solve student loan debt. This generation is ready to lead.
Mr. Yang, your signature policy is to give every adult in the United States $1,000 a month, no questions asked.
That's right.
I think that's like $3.2 trillion a year. How would you do that?
Sorry?
How would you do that?
Oh, God.
Well, so it's difficult to do if you have companies like Amazon, trillion-dollar tech companies, paying literally zero in taxes while they're closing 30% of our stores. Now, we need to put the American people in position to benefit from all these innovations in other parts of the economy. And if we had a value-added tax at even half the European level, it would generate over $800 billion in new revenue, which combined with the money in our hands, it would be the trickle-up economy from our people, families, and communities up. We would spend the money and it would circulate through our regional economies and neighborhoods, creating millions of jobs, making our families stronger and healthier. We'd save money on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room health care, and just the value gains from having a stronger, healthier, mentally healthier population would increase GDP by $700 billion. This is the move that we have to make, particularly as technology is now automating away millions of American jobs. It's why Donald Trump is our president today, that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we're about to do the same thing to millions of retail jobs, call center jobs, fast food jobs, truck driving jobs, and on through the economy.
Sure, if I get you understand a little bit better, so you're saying $1,000 a month for everyone over 18, but a value-added tax, so you can spend that $1,000 on value-added tax?
That guy doesn't even understand.
The value-added tax would end up, you'd still be increasing the buying power of the bottom 94% of Americans. You have to spend a lot of money for a mild value-added tax to eat up $12,000 a year per individual. So for the average family with 2 or 3 adults, it'd be $24,000 to $36,000 a year.
I actually don't like the VAT
Congressman
tax.
Swalwell, I want to talk a little bit about what Mr. Yang is talking about, and you just actually mentioned it. Many Americans are worried that things like self-driving cars, robots, drones, artificial intelligence will cost them their jobs. What would you do to help people get the skills they need to adapt to this new world?
We must always be a country where technology creates more jobs than it displaces. And I've seen the anxiety across America where the manufacturing floors go from 1,000 to 100 to 1. So we have to modernize our schools, value the teachers who prepare our kids, wipe the student debt from any teacher that goes into a community that needs it, invest in America's communities, especially where the best exports are people who move away to get skills. But Jose, I was 6 years old when a presidential candidate came to the California Democratic Convention and said, it's time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans. That candidate was then Senator Joe Biden. Joe Biden was right when he said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans 32 years ago. He's still right today.
Stupid attack. This guy doesn't even deserve to be here.
Pass the torch. If we're going to solve the issues of climate chaos, pass the torch. If we're going to solve the issue of student loan debt, pass the torch. If we're going to end gun violence for families who are fearful of sending their kids to school, pass the torch.
Vice President, would you like to sing a torch song?
How would you deal with tech? Joe Biden's old.
I'm still holding on to that torch. I want to make it clear to you, look, the fact of the matter is what we have to do is make sure that everybody is prepared better to go on to educate for an education. The fact is that's why I propose us focusing on schools that are in distress. That's why I think we should triple the amount of money we spend for Title I schools. That's why I think we should have universal pre-K. That's why I think every single person who graduates from high school, 65 out of 100 now, need something beyond high school. And we should provide for them to be able to get that education. That's why there should be free community college, cutting in half the cost of college. That's why we should be in a position where we do not have anyone have to pay back a student debt. When they get out, they are making less than $25,000 a year. Their debt is frozen, no interest payment until they get beyond that. We can't put people in a position where they aren't able to go on and move on. And so, folks, there's a lot we can do, but we have to make continuing education available for everyone so that everyone can compete in the 21st century. We're not doing that now.
Senator Sanders.
As the youngest guy on the stage, I feel like I probably ought to contribute to the generation.
As part of Joe's generation,
I'm all for
part of Joe's generation. Let me respond.
Before we move on,
the issue, if I may say, is not
generational. Please.
The issue is not generational. The issue is who has the guts to take on Wall Street, to take on the fossil fuel industry, to take on the big money interests who have unbelievable influence over the economic and political life of this country.
These issues
Senator Harris, I'm so sorry. We will let all of you speak. Senator Harris. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak.
The moderators have lost control.
Hey, guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table.
Swalwell should be asked
part of the issue that is at play in America today, and we've all been traveling around the country, I certainly have, I'm meeting people who are working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, this president walks around talking about and flouting his great economy, right? My great economy, my great economy. You ask him, well, how are you measuring this greatness of this economy of yours? And he talks about the stock market. Well, that's fine if you own stocks. So many families in America do not. You ask them, how are you measuring the greatness of this economy of yours? And they point to the jobless numbers and the unemployment numbers. Well, yeah, people in America are working. They're working 2 and 3 jobs. So when we talk about jobs, let's be really clear. In our America, no one should have to work more than 1 job to have a roof over their head and food on the table.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Strong.
We've all expressed an interest in talking about health care, so let's talk about health care. And this
Will
is going to be a
Marianne
show of
Williamson
hands
get to
question.
talk? We don't know.
We asked a question about health care last night that spurred a lot of discussion, as you know. We're going to do it again now. Many people watching at home have health insurance of their employer. Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a
Wrong way
government-run
to ask the question.
All right. Christian Gillibrand, Senator Gillibrand.
Yeah, so no, it's my turn.
Go ahead.
So this is a very important issue.
Yes.
So the plan that Senator Sanders and I and others support, Medicare for All, is how you get to single payer. But it has a buy-in transition period, which is really important. In 2005, when I ran for Congress in a 2-to-1 Republican district, I actually ran on Medicare for All, and I won that 2-to-1 Republican district twice. And the way I formulated it was simple. Anyone who doesn't have access to insurance they like, they could buy in at a percentage of income they could afford. So that's what we put into the transition period for our Medicare for All plan. I believe we need to get to universal health care as a right and not a privilege to single payer. The quickest way you get there is you create competition with the insurers. God bless the insurers. If they want to compete, they can certainly try. But they've never put people over their profits, and I doubt they ever will. So what will happen is people will choose Medicare, you will transition, we will get to Medicare for All, and then your step to single payer is so short. I would make it an earned benefit, just like Social Security, so that you buy in your whole life. It is always there for you, and it's permanent, and it's universal.
Senator, your time is out. I want to put that same question to Mayor Buttigieg.
Yeah, we've taught, look, everybody who says Medicare for all, every person in politics who allows that phrase to escape their lips has a responsibility to explain how you're actually supposed to get from here to there.
Check out Bernie's bill.
Now, here's how I would do it. It's very similar. I would call it Medicare for all who want it. You take something like Medicare, a flavor of that, you make it available on the exchanges, people can buy in, and then if people like us are right, that will be not only a more inclusive plan, but a more efficient plan than any of the corporate answers out there, then it will be a very natural glide path to the single-payer environment. But let's remember, even in countries that have outright socialized medicine, like England, even there's still a private sector. That's fine. It's just that for our primary care, we can't be relying on the tender mercies of the corporate system. This one's very personal for me. I started out this year dealing with the terminal illness of my father. I make decisions for a living, and nothing could have prepared me for the kind of decisions our family faced. But the thing we had going for us was that we never had to make those decisions based on whether it was going to bankrupt our family because of Medicare. And I want every family to have that same freedom to do what is medically right.
All right, pretty wishy-washy. Some things that make sense, some things that don't.
Vice President Biden, I want to put the question to you. You were one of the architects of Obamacare.
Let's hear
where do we
from
go
Biden.
from here?
Well, look, this is very personal to me. When my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, my two boys were really very badly injured. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like had I not had adequate health care available immediately. And then when my son came home from Iraq after a year, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was given months to live. I can't fathom what would have happened if, in fact, they said, by the way, the last 6 months of your life, you're on your own. We're cutting off. You've used up your time. The fact of the matter is that the quickest, fastest way to do it is build on Obamacare, to build on what we did. And
disagree? He's being honest.
Secondly, to make sure that everyone does have an option. Everyone, whether they have private insurance, employer insurance, or no insurance, they, in fact, could buy in the exchange to a Medicare-like plan. And the way to do that, we can do it quickly. Look, urgency matters. There's people right now facing what I faced and what we faced without any of the help I had. We must move now. I'm against any Democrat who opposes, takes down Obamacare, and any Republican who wants to get rid of it.
Let me turn to Senator Sanders.
Unless it's something better.
Senator Sanders, you basically want to scrap the private health insurance system as we know it and replace it with a government-run plan. None of the states that have tried something like that, California, Vermont, New York, has struggled with it, have been successful. If politicians can't make it work in those states, how would you implement it on a national level? How does this work?
Listen, I find it hard to believe that every other major country on earth, including my neighbor 50 miles north of me, Canada, somehow has figured out a way to provide health care to every man, woman, and child. And in most cases, they're spending 50% per capita what we are spending. Let's be clear. Let us be very clear. The function of health care today, from the insurance and drug company perspective, is not to provide quality care to all in a cost-effective way. The function of the healthcare system today is to make billions in profits for the insurance companies. And last year, if you could believe it, while we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and I will lower prescription drug prices in half in this country, top 10 companies made $69 billion in profit. They will spend hundreds of millions of dollars
Bernie's strongest
lying
moment.
to the American people, telling us why we cannot have a Medicare for all single-payer program.
I just have to follow up there. How do you implement it on a national level? How do you implement it on a national level, given the fact it's not succeeded and other states have tried?
I will tell you how we'll do it. We'll do it the way real change has always taken place, whether it was the labor movement, the civil rights movement, or the women's movement. We will have Medicare for all, when tens of millions of people are prepared to stand up and tell the insurance companies and the drug companies that their day is gone, that health care is a human right, not something to make huge profits off of.
All right, Ms.
Very vague, but I mean, still well done.
This is a question for you. We've been excuse me, I'm addressing the question, Ms.
Marianne
Williamson. We've been
we'll get to
talking a lot about access to health insurance, but for many Americans, their most pressing concern is the high cost of health care. How would you lower the cost of prescription drugs?
Well, first of all, the government should never have made the deal with the big pharma that they couldn't negotiate. That was just part of the regular corruption by which multinational corporations have their way with us. You know, I want to say that while I agree with, I'm with Senator Bennett and others, but I agree with almost everything here. I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice if we've got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you've got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again.
Where is her accent
We've got to get
from? I'm
deeper than
interested in
just
that
these
accent.
superficial fixes, as important as they are. Even if we're just talking about the superficial fixes, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies.
Mention homeopathy.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Bennett, a question for you. You want to keep the system that we have in place with Obamacare and build on it. You mentioned that a moment ago. Is that enough to get us to universal coverage?
I believe that will get us the quickest way there. And I thought the Vice President was very moving about this, and Mayor Pete as well. I had prostate cancer recently, as you may know, and that's why I was a little late getting in the race. The same week, my kid had her appendectomy out. And I feel very strongly that families ought to be able to have this choice. I think that's what the American people want. I believe it will get us there quickly. There are millions of people in America that do not have health insurance today because they can't. They're too wealthy. They make too much money to be on Medicaid. They can't afford health insurance. When Senator Sanders says that Canada is single payer, there are 35 million people in Canada. There are 330 million people in the United States, easily the number of people on a public option. It could easily be 35 million. And for them, it would be Medicare for all, as Mayor Buttigieg says. But for others that want to keep it, they should be able to keep it. And I think that will be the fastest way to get where we need to go. Also, I will say, Bernie is a very honest person. He has said over and over again, unlike others that have supported this legislation, over and over again, that this will make illegal all insurance except cosmetic, except insurance for, I guess that's for plastic surgery. Everything else is banned under the Medicare for All proposal.
I'd let you go a little longer there, but obviously, Senator Sanders, you get a response. Senator Sanders,
just very briefly. You know, Mike, Medicare is the most popular health insurance program in the country. People don't like their private insurance companies. They like their doctors and hospitals. Under our plan, people go to any doctor they want, any hospital they want. We will substantially lower the cost of health care in this country because we'll stop the greed of the insurance companies.
On this issue, we have to think about how this affects real people. And the reality of how this affects real people is captured in a story that many of us heard, and I will paraphrase. There is, any night in America, a parent who's seeing that their child has a temperature that is out of control, calls 911, what should I do? And they say, take the child to the emergency room. And so they get in their car, and they drive, and they're sitting in the parking lot outside of the emergency room, looking at those sliding glass doors while they have the hand on the forehead of their child, knowing that if they walk through those sliding glass doors, even though they have insurance,
getting spam calls, sorry,
they will be out a $5,000 deductible when they walk through those doors. That's what insurance companies are doing in America today.
We're going to continue this discussion. I want us to put it in candidates, please.
I'm one of those parents. I was just in the emergency room, and I'm telling you,
Congressman, thank you.
We fight health insurance companies every single week. We stand in line and pay expensive prescription drugs. We have to have a health care guarantee. If you're sick, you're seen, and in America, you never go broke because of it.
Okay.
With
A lot of you have been talking tonight about these government health care plans that you've proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay. Let me start with
Okay,
Mayor
well,
Buttigieg.
that takes it
Why?
out of the equation.
Mayor Buttigieg, why?
Because our country is healthier when everybody is healthier. And remember, we're talking about something people are given a chance to buy into. In the same way that there are undocumented immigrants in my community who pay. They pay sales taxes. They pay property taxes directly or indirectly. This is not about a handout. This is an insurance program. And we do ourselves no favors by having 11 million undocumented people in our country be unable to access health care. But of course, the real problem is we shouldn't have 11 million undocumented people with no pathway to citizenship. It makes no sense. And the American people agree on what to do. This is the crazy thing. If leadership consists of forming a consensus around a divisive issue, this White House just divided us around a consensus issue. The American people want a pathway to citizenship. They want protections for dreamers. We need to clean up the lawful immigration system, like how my father immigrated to this country. And as part of a compromise, we can do whatever common sense measures are needed at the border. But Washington can't deliver on something the American people want. What does that tell you about the system we're living in? It tells you it needs profound structural reform.
Vice President Biden, I believe you said that your health care plan would not cover undocumented immigrants. Could you explain your position?
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
Didn't he raise his hand?
At the show of hands, you did not raise your
Oh,
hand.
he didn't.
Did you raise your hand?
No, I did.
Okay,
yeah, he did.
Sorry. So you said they would be covered under your plan, which is different than Obamacare.
Yes, but here's the thing.
Can you explain that change?
Yes. You cannot let, as the mayor said, you cannot let people who are sick, no matter where they come from, no matter what their status, go uncovered. You can't do that. It's just going to be taken care of, period. You have to. It's a humane thing to do. But here's the deal. The deal is that he's right about three things. Number one, they, in fact, contribute to the well-being of the country, but they also, for example, they've increased the lifespan of Social Security because they have a job, they're paying a Social Security tax. That's what they're doing. It's increased the lifespan. They would do the same thing in terms of reducing the overall cost of health care by them being able to be treated and not wait till they're in extremis. The other thing is, folks, look, we can deal with these insurance companies. We can deal with the insurance companies by, number one, putting insurance executives in jail for their misleading advertising, what they're doing on opioids, what they're doing paying doctors to prescribe. We could be doing this by making sure everyone who is on Medicare, that the government should be able to negotiate the price for whatever the drug costs are. We can do this by making sure that we're in a position that we, in fact, allow people. Time's up.
I just want to address that point.
Actually, hold off a minute. We need to take a short break here. We got a lot more we need to talk to all of you about, so stick with us. We're just getting started. We'll be back with more from Miami right after this.
So Biden seems bored. Like he doesn't seem that interested in the debate. He doesn't seem that interested. It's almost like he doesn't really want to be president. It's a very strange vibe. Maybe he's tired. He seems to have, his voice seems a little weak. I don't know if anybody else is noticing that. When we come back, we have over 10,000 people on the live stream, a record for us. When we come back, maybe we will do 15 minutes of subscriber only chat. Please use the coupon code membership. All the info is right over there. All of that tells you how to support the program directly. That funds the stream. That funds the phone lines. It funds everything. Let me just say thanks to some of the people that have signed up. And there's a lot of you while we've been streaming. Deborah Tella is a new member. Christina Anderson, I have to thank. Joel Rosenfeld. I would be remiss to forget Joel Rosenfeld. Who else do we have? Marcos Hernandez has signed up. Casey Bassett, Jennifer Rhodes, Claudia Miles, Xavier Hernandez. I wonder if that's the Xavier Hernandez I know. Melissa King, Hayden Park, Benjamin Sokolik, James Foster has signed up. Daniel Behar, Joan Mayorga. Who else? Suzanne Goldblatt. Richard Windmiller is a new member. Jim G has made a contribution over on Patreon, which is delightful. Benjamin Levitt is a new member. Daniel Geitz has signed up. Who else here? Rachel Leiden is a new member, so please keep those coming. 11,000 of you. Listen, if 1% of the people on the stream get a membership, we are in really, really, really good shape. And over on the YouTube side, Cho Zin and Joseph Bay, also new members. The debate starts again. Or does it? It does.
Welcome back from Miami. Jose is going to lead off the questioning in this round.
Thank you very much. Senator Harris, last month, more than 130,000 migrants were apprehended at the southern border. Many of them are being detained, including small children, in private detention centers in Florida and throughout our country. Most of the candidates on this stage say the conditions at these facilities are abhorrent. On January 20th, 2021, if you are president, what specifically would you do with the thousands of people who try to reach the United States every day and want a better life through asylum?
Immediately on January 20th of 2021, I will, first of all, we cannot forget our DACA recipients, and so I'm going to start there. I will immediately, by executive action, reinstate DACA status and DACA protection to those young people. I will further extend protection for deferral of deportation for their parents and for veterans, who we have so many who are undocumented and have served our country and fought for our democracy.
Right.
I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages. I will get rid of the private detention centers. And I will ensure that this microphone that the President of the United States holds in her hand is used in a way that is about reflecting the values of our country, and not about locking children up, separating them from their parents. And I have to just say that we have to think about this issue in terms of real people. A mother,
very strong,
who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril to come here. Why would that mother do that? I will tell you. Because she has decided for that child to remain where they are is worse. But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of our America and our values, and it's got to end.
Governor Hickenlooper.
She's doing really well tonight. Gillibrand wishes she could come up with that stuff.
Day one at the White House.
Will never happen for him.
You respond
with these children?
Let me get to you in just a second.
I'm sorry.
Governor, day one, thousands of men, women, and children cross the border asking for asylum for a better life. What do you do? Day one, hour one.
Well, certainly the images we've seen this week just compound the emotional impact that the world is judging us by. If you'd ever told me any time in my life that this country would sanction federal agents to take children from the arms of their parents, put them in cages, actually put them up for adoption, in Colorado we call that kidnapping, I would have told you...
He seems confused.
I would have told you it was unbelievable. And the first thing we have to do is recognize the humanitarian crisis on the border for what it is. We make sure that there are the sufficient facilities in place so that women and children are not separated from their families, the children are with their families. We have to make sure that ICE is completely reformed and they begin looking at their job in a humanitarian way where they're addressing the whole needs of the people that they are engaged with along the border. And we'd have to make sure ultimately that we provide not just shelter, but food, clothing, and access to medical care.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes, what Donald Trump has done to these children, and it's not just in Colorado, Governor, you're right, it is kidnapping, and it's extremely important for us to realize that. If you forcibly take a child from their parents' arms, you are kidnapping them. And if you take a lot of children and you put them in a detainment center, thus inflicting chronic trauma upon them, that's called child abuse. This is collective child abuse. And when this is crime, both of those things are a crime. And if your government does it, that doesn't make it less of a crime. These are state-sponsored crimes.
Congressman.
What President
They've had
Trump
enough
has
of her, it
done
seems like.
is not only attack these children, not only demonize these immigrants, he is attacking a basic principle of America's moral core. We open our hearts to the stranger. This is extremely important. And it's also important for all of us to remember, and I have great respect for everyone who is on this stage, but we're going to talk about what to do about health care. Well, where have you been, guys? Because if it's not just a matter of a plan, and I haven't heard anybody on this stage who has talked about American foreign policy in Latin America and how we might have, in the last few decades, contributed to something being more.
Senator Gillibrand, what would you do as president with a reality?
Well, one of the worst things about President Trump that he's done to this country is he's torn apart the moral fabric of who we are. When he started separating children at the border from their parents, the fact that 7 children have died in his custody, the fact that dozens of children have been separated from their parents and they have no plan to reunite them. So I would do a few things. First, I would fight for comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway to citizenship. Second, I would reform how we treat asylum seekers at the border. I would have a community-based treatment center where you're doing it within the communities, where asylum seekers are given lawyers, where there's real immigration judges, not employees of the Attorney General, but appointed for life, and have a community-based system. I would fund border security, but the worst thing President Trump has done is he's diverted the funds away from cross-border terrorism, cross-border human trafficking, drug trafficking, and gun trafficking, and he's given that money to the for-profit prisons. I would not be spending money in for-profit prisons to lock up children and asylum seekers.
We had a very spirited debate on this stage last night on the topic of decriminalization of the border. If you'd be so kind, raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation. Can we keep the hands up so we can see them?
Half up. Okay.
And let's remember, that's not just a theoretical exercise. That criminalization, that is the basis for family separation. You do away with that, it's no longer possible. Of course, it wouldn't be possible anyway in my presidency because it is dead wrong. We got to talk about one other thing, because the Republican Party likes to cloak itself in the language of religion. Now, our party doesn't talk about that as much, largely for a very good reason, which was we are committed to the separation of church and state, and we stand for people of any religion and people of no religion. But we should call out hypocrisy when we see it. And for a party that associates itself with Christianity, to say that it is okay to suggest that God would smile on the division of families at the hands of federal agents, that God would condone putting children in cages, has lost all claim to ever use religious language again.
Vice President,
strong moment for him, yeah.
Mr. Vice President, I don't know if you raised your hand or were just asking to speak. Look, would you decriminalize crossing the border without documents?
The first thing I would do is unite families. I'd surge immediately billions of dollars worth of help to the region immediately. Look, I talk about foreign policy. I'm the guy that got a bipartisan agreement at the very end of the campaign, at the very end of our term, to spend $740 million to deal with the problem. And that was to go to the root cause of why people are leaving in the first place. It was working. We saw, as you know, a net decrease in the number of children who were coming. The crisis was abated. And along came this president. He said he immediately discontinued that. We all talk about these things. I did it. I did it. 740 million. Now look. Second thing.
Most energy tonight, anyway.
The law now requires the reuniting of those families. We would reunite those families, period. And if not, we'd put those children in a circumstance where they were safe until we could find their parents. And lastly, the idea that he's in court with his Justice Department saying children in cages do not need a bed, do not need a blanket, do not need a toothbrush. That is outrageous.
Vice President, the Obama-Biden administration was... The Obama-Biden administration deported more than 3 million Americans. My question to you is, if an individual is living in the United States of America without documents and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
No. Depending if they committed
Who
a
said that? Was
major
that Williamson?
crime, they should be deported. And the president was left in his. President Obama, I think, did a heck of a job. To compare him to what this guy's doing is absolutely, I find, close to immoral. But the fact is that, look, we should not be locking people up. We should be making sure we change the circumstance, as we did, why they would leave in the first place.
What's his
and those
position?
Who
I don't
come
understand his
seeking
position.
asylum, we should immediately have the capacity to absorb them, keep them safe until they can be heard.
A 15-second, if you could, if you wish to answer. Should someone who is here without documents, and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
That person should not be the focus of deportation. We should
Not be
fundamentally
the
change
focus.
the way we deal
It's not
with
an
it.
answer. It's not an answer.
Senator,
I want to suggest that I agree with a lot of what Kamala just said. And that is, on day one, we take out our executive order pen and we rescind every damn thing on this issue that Trump has done. Number two, picking up on the point that Joe made, we got to look at the root causes. And you have a situation where Honduras, among other things, is a failing state, massive corruption. You got gangs who are telling families that if a 10-year-old does not join that gang, that family is going to be killed. What we have got to do on day one is invite the presidents and the leadership of Central America and Mexico together. This is a hemispheric problem that we have got to
Congressman
address.
Swalwell, what do you do?
Say your piece.
Day one?
No. If someone is here without documents and that is their only
He didn't want to answer
offense,
this one.
is that person to be deported?
No. That person can be a part of this great American experience. That person can contribute. My congressional district is one of the most diverse in America, and we see the benefits
When does
people
Andrew Yang
contribute
get
and they
the top?
become a part of the community and they're not in the shadow economy. Day one for me, families are reunited. This president, though, for immigrants, there's nothing he will not do to separate a family, cage a child, or erase their existence by weaponizing the census. And there is nothing that we cannot do in the courts and that I will not do as president to reverse that and to make sure that families always belong together.
Senator Harris.
Well, thank you. I will say, no, absolutely not. They should not be deported. And I actually, this was one of the very few issues with which I disagreed with the administration, with whom I otherwise had a great relationship and a great deal of respect. But on the secure communities issue, I was Attorney General of California. I led the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice in a state of 40 million people. And on this issue, I disagreed with my president because the policy was to allow deportation of people who, by ICE's own definition, were non-criminals. So as Attorney General and the Chief Law Officer of the state of California, I issued a directive to the sheriffs of my state that they did not have to comply with detainers and instead should make decisions based on the best interest of public safety of their community. Because what I saw, and I was tracking it every day, I was tracking it and saw that parents, people who had not committed a crime, even by ICE's own definition, were being deported. But I have to add a point here. The problem with this kind of policy, and I know it as a prosecutor, I want a rape victim to be able to run in the middle of the street and wave down a police officer and report the crime against her. I want anybody who has been the victim of any real crime to be able to do that and not be afraid that if they do that, they will be deported because the abuser will tell them it is they who is the criminal. It is wrong.
She's winning this debate, definitely.
We're going to turn to the issue of trade now, if we can. Last night, we asked the candidates on this stage to name the greatest geopolitical threat facing the U.S. 4 of them mention China. U.S. businesses say China steals our intellectual property, and party leaders on both sides accuse China of manipulating their currency to keep the cost of goods artificially low. I'll ask this to Senator Bennett to start off with. How would you stand up to China?
I think that, first of all, the biggest threat to our national security right now is Russia, not China. And second, on China, we've got competition because of what they've done with our election. In China, I think the president's been right to push back on China, but has done it in completely the wrong way. We should mobilize the entire rest of the world, who all have a shared interest in pushing back on China's mercantilist trade policies, and I think we can do that. I'd like to answer the other question before this as well.
You have the time?
When I see these kids at the border, I see my mom because I know she sees herself, because she was separated from her parents for years during the Holocaust in Poland. And for Donald Trump to be doing what he's doing to children and their families at the borders, I say this as somebody who wrote the immigration bill in 2013 that created a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people in this country, that had the most progressive DREAM Act that's ever been conceived, much less passed. It got 68 votes in the Senate, that had $46 billion of border security in it. There was sophisticated 21st century border security, not a medieval wall. And the president has turned the border of the United States into a symbol of nativist hostility that the whole world is looking at.
Signs
when
of
what
life,
we should be represented by is the Statue of Liberty, which has brought my parents to this country to begin with.
Signs of life.
We need to make a change. Mr. Yang, let me bring you in on this, on the issue of China. You've expressed a lot of concerns about technology and taking jobs. Are you worried about China? And if so, how would you stand up against it?
Well, I just want to agree that I think Russia is our greatest geopolitical threat because they've been hacking our democracy successfully, and they've been laughing their asses off about it for the last couple of years.
I told them last
focus
night,
on that
foreign policy,
before we start worrying about other threats. Now, China, they do pirate our intellectual property. It's a massive problem. But the tariffs and the trade war are just punishing businesses and producers and workers on both sides. I met with a farmer in Iowa who said he spent 6 years building up a buying relationship in China that's now disappeared and gone forever. And the beneficiaries have not been American workers or people in China. It's been Southeast Asia and other producers that have then stepped into the void. So we need to crack down on Chinese malfeasance in the trade relationship, but the tariffs and the trade war are the wrong way to go.
All right, Mayor Buttigieg, how would you stand up against China?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we've got to recognize that the China challenge really is a serious one. This is not something to dismiss or wave away. And if you look at what China is doing, they're using technology for the perfection of dictatorship. But their fundamental economic model isn't going to change because of some tariffs. I live in the industrial Midwest. Folks who aren't in the shadow of a factory are somewhere near a soy field where I live. And manufacturers, and especially soy farmers, are hurting. Tariffs are taxes. And Americans are going to pay on average $800 more a year because of these tariffs. Meanwhile, China is investing so that they could soon be able to run circles around us in artificial intelligence. And this president is fixated on the China relationship as if all that mattered was the export balance on dishwashers. We've got a much bigger issue on our hands. But at a moment when their authoritarian model is being held up as an alternative to ours because ours looks so chaotic compared to theirs right now because of our internal divisions. The biggest thing we've got to do is invest in our own domestic competitiveness. If we disinvest in our own infrastructure, education, we are never going to be able to compete. And if we really want to be an alternative, a democratic alternative, we actually have to demonstrate that we care about democratic values at home and around the world.
We've got a good debate so far. We're going to take a quick break here, candidates. When we come back, the questioning continues with our colleagues.
Okay, so here's my impression so far. Kamala Harris is crushing this debate. She is by far winning. She's not my preferred candidate. I believe that there are more progressive choices than Kamala Harris, but on style and on the fit between the questions and her ability to answer them in a way that is articulate and strong, she is running away with this debate. Who else is doing well? I don't know. I mean, okay, Buttigieg, he speaks in extraordinary generalities and platitudes, but he's had some strong answers. Bernie has gotten a couple of good ones, and I think he's doing fine. I don't think Bernie's doing any damage here, but I think he's maybe missing the possibility of really doing something even bigger and growing his support. But I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. To me, Kamala Harris is the person who is significantly doing better in this debate. We're about halfway through this debate, night 2, debate 1, part B, or whatever it is that they are calling it. If you have never seen anything on our channel before, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Okay, it's free. We have nearly 700,000 subscribers. Let's make it actually 700,000. Hit the subscribe button, smash the subscribe button, or just click it, whatever. And also consider, there's info right there, okay? Sign up at joinpacman.com. We have never had as many people watching a live stream as we have right now, 13,340. If 1% of you just right now went to joinpacman.com, whether you use that coupon code This Is 2020 or not, that is just absolutely huge for a program like ours. And I will mention this. This is not written anywhere. I've mentioned this last night. There is a secret hidden coupon code. So that coupon code saves you 40%. That's on screen. The coupon code half19 will just straight up take 50% off the membership of your choice. Okay. I don't care how much you pay. Even if you go to Patreon and you throw in $1, we estimate 1% of our audience supports the work we do financially. If we can get that to 3%, it would be huge. So I don't care whether it's $1 or membership or hitting the join button down below and becoming a YouTube member. It's all fantastic. A lot of super chats continuing to come in. A lot of people don't like Bennett. People wondering if Yang is nervous. Super chats about that. The idea that there's too much discussion about Donald Trump going on. Why is Bernie not bringing his best? Is he trying to lose? Yeah, this is not Bernie's best performance. He's gotten lucky in that they've gone to him on questions that he is strong on, but this is not Bernie Sanders' best performance by any means. 420 burn it, let's go Bernie. A lot of new YouTube members considering dropping the Young Turks membership for David's. Wow, that's flattering. We Naz, well done, friend. Welcome. Okay. Joe Rollins says most Americans support Medicare for all. This party is not trying to win at this point. The healthcare piece yesterday and today was just a mess. I mean, truly, truly a mess. Peter Bramge says, do you know about anyone's space policy? Mars moon colonization, Space Force, NASA funding. Annoyingly quiet on the topic. Yeah, I haven't heard much from anybody. I mean, certainly not tonight. David, have you thought about writing a book? I have, but I don't know what I would write about. Bernie 2020, what product do you use for your great hair? Yeah, I use American Crew, a product called Fiber. It's tremendous. I'm not sponsored by them either. Ryan Mainek says, enjoying the show. I'm considering joining the 1%. Beautiful thing. Razasha Wolf says, light it up, Bernie. Harvey Willings says, this is a cacophony of 60-second speeches, not a debate. And Meg805 says, nope on UBI, need universal health care, pre-K and free college. What happened to Obama, AME, Arnie Duncan, wraparound care for school age? Everyone should be able to make a livable wage, college or not. Diverse solutions are needed. A lot there. Let's get back to the debate. Keep those memberships coming. Hit the join button down below. Many ways to support the stream. Record streaming evening for us, over 13,000. We've never achieved that, and it is a great thing to see.
Debate from the Arts Center in Miami.
As we continue the questioning, we want to bring in more members of our team.
So let's turn it over to Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow.
Get more people on the stage, too. Why not?
Rachel, I had a dream that we've done this before.
No. This is definitely
didn't happen.
The first time.
Definitely first time. Thank you, Lester, Savannah, and Jose. Let's quickly recap the rules one more time. 20 candidates qualified for this first debate. We've heard from 10 of them from last night. We're hearing from 10 more tonight. Breakdown for each night was selected at random. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer direct questions, 30 seconds for follow-ups if necessary.
Because of this large field of candidates, not every person will be able to comment on everything, but the less audience reaction there is, the more time they will all get. Over the course of the next hour, we will hear from all of these candidates, but we are going to begin this hour with Mayor Buttigieg. In the last 5 years, civil rights activists in our country have led a national debate over race and the criminal justice system.
Right.
Your community of South Bend, Indiana, has recently been in uproar over an officer-involved shooting. The police force in South Bend is now 6% black in a city that is 26% black. Why has that not improved over your 2 terms as mayor?
Because I couldn't get it done. My community is in anguish right now because of an officer-involved shooting. A black man, Eric Logan, killed by a white officer. And I'm not allowed to take sides until the investigation comes back. The officer said he was attacked with a knife, but he didn't have his body camera on. It's a mess, and we're hurting. And I could walk you through all of the things that we have done as a community, all of the steps that we took from bias training to de-escalation, but it didn't save the life of Eric Logan. And when I look into his mother's eyes, I have to face the fact that nothing that I say will bring him back. This is an issue that is facing our community and so many communities around the country. And until we move policing out from the shadow of systemic racism, whatever this particular incident teaches us, we will be left with the bigger problem of the fact that there's a wall of mistrust put up one racist act at a time, not just from what's happened in the past, but from what's happening around the country in the present. It threatens the well-being of every community. And I am determined to bring about a day when a white person driving a vehicle and a black person driving a vehicle, when they see a police officer approaching, feels the exact same thing, a feeling not of fear, but of safety. I am determined to bring that day about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I could ask one question, just because I think...
Governor, I'll give you 30 seconds.
I think that the question they're asking in South Bend, I think in cities across the country, is why has it taken so long? We had a shooting when I first became mayor 10 years before Ferguson, and the community came together and we created an Office of the Independent Monitor, a Civilian Oversight Commission. We diversified the police force in 2 years. We actually did de-escalation training. I think the real question that America should be asking is why 5 years after Ferguson, every city doesn't have this level of police accountability.
Governor Hickenlooper, thank you.
I got to respond to that. Look, we've taken so many steps toward police accountability that, the FOP just denounced me for too much accountability. We're obviously not there yet. And I accept responsibility for that because I'm in charge.
Policy, you should fire the chief.
Swalwell has one question. Are they going to validate his parking on the way out tonight?
And there will be accountability for the officer involved.
But you're the mayor. You should fire the chief if that's the policy and someone died.
All of these issues are extremely important, but there are specifics, there are symptoms. And the underlying cause has to do with deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system. And the Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery for this very reason. I do not believe that the average American is a racist, but the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States.
Ms. Williamson, thank you very much.
Vice President Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get to
stage. I would like to speak on the issue of race.
And there it is. De Blasio's got a black son. Cory Booker is black, and so is Kamala Harris.
We'll give you 30 seconds since we're going to come back to you on this again in just a moment. Go for 30 seconds.
Okay. So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we have also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground.
Here we go.
But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true, number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender when in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. number one. Number two, as the Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we work very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major, major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, the busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
So that's where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into this.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
All of these things have
Senator Sanders, Senator Sanders, I'm going to go to you on this. You said on the day you launched your campaign that voters should focus on what people stand for, not a candidate's race or age or sexual orientation. Many Democrats are very excited by the diversity of this field, on this stage and on last night's stage, and the perspective that diversity brings to this contest and to these issues. Are you telling Democratic voters that diversity shouldn't matter when they make this decision?
No, absolutely not. Unlike the Republican Party, we encourage diversity. We believe in diversity. That's what America is about. But in addition to diversity, in terms of having more women, more people from the LGBT community, we also have to do something else. And that is, we have to ask ourselves a simple question. And that, how come today the worker in the middle of our economy is making no more money than he or she made 45 years ago, and that in the last 30 years, the top 1% has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth? We need a party that is diverse, but we need a party that has the guts to stand up to the powerful special interests who have so much power over the economic and political life of this country.
Senator Gillibrand, I want to give you 30 seconds on this.
Well, first of all, where Bernie left off, we've heard a lot of good ideas on this stage tonight and a lot of plans. But the truth is, until you go to the root of the corruption, the money in politics, the fact that Washington is run by the special interests, you are never going to solve any of these problems. I have the most comprehensive approach that experts agree is the most transformative plan to actually take on political corruption, to get money out of politics through publicly funded elections, to have clean elections. If we do that and get money out of politics, we can guarantee health care as a right, not a privilege. We can deal with institutional racism. We can take on income inequality, and we can take on the corporate corruption that runs Washington.
And the first constitutional amendment to do that was introduced by me when I was a young senator.
Thank you, Vice President. We want to shift topics here. Senator Bennett, the next question is for you. On the issue of partisan gridlock, President Obama promised in 2012 that after his re-election, Republicans would want to work with Democrats. Fever would break. That did not happen. Now Vice President Biden is saying the same thing, that if he is elected in 2020, both parties will want to work together. Should voters believe that somehow if there's a Democratic president in 2021, that gridlock is going to magically disappear?
Gridlock will not magically disappear as long as Mitch McConnell is there, first. Second, that's why it is so important for us to win not just the presidency, to have somebody that can run in all 50 states, but to win the Senate as well. And that's why we have to propose policies that can be supported, like Medicare X, so that we can build a broad coalition of Americans to overcome broken Washington, D.C. I agree with what Senator Gillibrand was saying. I share a lot of her views. We need to end gerrymandering in Washington. We need to end political gerrymandering in Washington. The court today said they couldn't do anything about it. We need to overturn Citizens United. The court was the one that gave us Citizens United. And the attack on voting rights in Shelby versus Holder is something we need to deal with. All of those things has happened since Vice President Biden was in the Senate. And we face structural problems that we have to overcome with a broad coalition. It's the only way we can do it. We need to root out the corruption in Washington, expand people's right to get to the polls, and I think then we can succeed.
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds. What?
Andrew Yang is still on the
It does
stage.
sound
I was
as if
wondering.
you haven't seen what's been happening in the United States Senate over the last 12 years. It didn't happen. Why?
I have seen what happened. Just since we were vice president, we needed 3 votes to pass an $800 billion recovery act that kept us from going into depression. I got 3 votes changed. We needed to be able to keep the government from shutting down and going bankrupt. I got Mitch McConnell to raise taxes $600 billion by raising the top rate. And as recently as after President got elected, I was able to put together a coalition of the Cures Act that billions of dollars go into cancer research, bipartisan. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you just have to go out and beat them. I went into 20 states, over 60 candidates, and guess what? We beat them. We won back the Senate.
Thank you.
Chuck,
Not sure I understand this.
30 seconds. Yeah, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Sometimes you do have to beat him, but the deal that he talked about with Mitch McConnell was a complete victory for the Tea Party. It extended the Bush tax cuts permanently. The Democratic Party had been running against that for 10 years. We lost that economic argument because that deal extended almost all those Bush tax cuts permanently and put in place the mindless cuts that we still are dealing with today that are called the sequester. That was a great deal for Mitch McConnell. It was a terrible deal for America.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Bennett. Go ahead, 30 seconds.
The reason why the Trump tax cut had to be passed is because they had to pay back their donors. You heard it. They actually said those words. So the corruption in Washington is real, and it is something that makes every one of the plans we've heard about over the last several months impossible. And I have the most comprehensive approach to do it with clean elections, publicly funded elections. So we restore the power of our democracy into the hands of the voters, not into the Koch brothers. We were talking about issues. Imagine, we're in Florida, imagine the Parkland kids having as much power in our democracy as the Koch brothers or the NRA. Imagine their voices carrying farther and wider than anyone else because their voice is needed.
Senator Gillibrand, I'm trying to get everybody in here.
As president, it's the first thing I'm going to do because nothing else is possible, whether it's education or health care or ending institutional racism.
Thank you very much.
Senator Sanders, I'd like to put a different question to you. Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land since 1973. Now that there is a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, several Republican-controlled states have passed laws to severely restrict or even ban abortion. One of those laws could very well make it to the Supreme Court during your presidency, if you're elected president.
Yes.
What is your plan if Roe is struck down in the court while you're president?
Well, my plan is somebody who believes, for a start, that a woman's right to control her own body is a constitutional right, that government and politicians should not infringe on that right. We will do everything we can to defend our Roe versus Wade. Second of all, let me make a promise here. You ask about litmus test. My litmus test is I will never nominate any justice to the Supreme Court unless that justice is 100% clear he or she will defend Roe v. Wade. Third of all, I do not believe in packing the court. We got a terrible 5-4 majority conservative court right now. But I do believe that constitutionally we have the power to rotate judges to other courts. And that brings in new blood into the Supreme Court and a majority, I hope, that will understand that a woman has the right to control her own body and that corporations cannot run the United States of America.
Hold on, I'm going to give you 10 additional seconds, because the question is, what if the court has already overturned Roe, and Roe is gone? All of the things you just described would be to try to preserve Roe. If Roe is gone, what could you do as president to preserve abortion rights?
Well, first of all, let me tell you this. Didn't come up here, but let's face this. Medicare for all guarantees every woman in this country the right to have an abortion if she wants it.
Thank you,
Senator.
And can I just address this for a second? And I want to talk directly to America's women and to the men who love them. Women's reproductive rights are under assault by President Trump and the Republican Party. 30 states are trying to overturn Roe v. Wade right now. And it is mind-boggling to me that we are debating this on this stage in 2019 among Democrats, whether women should have access to reproductive rights. I think we have to stop playing defense and start playing offense. But let me tell you one thing about politics, because it goes to the corruption and the deal-making. When the door is closed and the negotiations are made, there are conversations about women's rights, and compromises have been made on our backs. That's how we got to Hyde. That's how the Hyde Amendment was created, a compromise by leaders of both parties. Then we have the ACA. During the ACA negotiation, I had to fight like heck with other women to make sure that contraception wasn't sold down the river or abortion services. And so what we need to know
Where's she going with
imagine this one question. When we beat President Trump, and Mitch McConnell walks into the Oval Office, God forbid, to do negotiations, who do you want, when that door closes, to be sitting behind that desk to fight for women's rights? I have been the fiercest advocate for women's reproductive freedom for over a decade. And I promise you, as president, when that door closes, I will guarantee women's reproductive freedom no matter what.
Thank you. We're moving to climate. We're moving to climate, guys. Senator Harris, I'm addressing you first on this. You live in a state that has been hit by drought, wildfires, flooding. Climate change is a major concern for voters in your state. It's pretty obvious. Obviously, this state as well. Last night, voters heard many of the candidates weigh in on their proposals. Explain specifically what yours is.
Well, first of all, I don't even call it climate change. It's a climate crisis. It represents an existential threat to us as a species.
Okay, good. But give us the proposal.
And the fact that we have a president of the United States who has embraced science fiction over science fact will be to our collective peril. I visited, while the embers were smoldering, the wildfires in California. I spoke with firefighters who were in the midst of fighting a fire while their own homes were burning. And on this issue, it is a critical issue that is about what we must do to confront what is immediate and before us right now. That is why I support a Green New Deal. It is why I believe on day one, and as president, will re-enter us in the Paris Agreement, because we have to take these issues seriously. And frankly, we have a president of the United States. We talked about, you asked before, what is the greatest national security threat to the United States? It's Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to tell you why.
Give us the
because
plan.
I agree, climate change represents an existential threat. He denies the science. You want to talk about North Korea, real threat in terms of nuclear arsenal, but what does he do? He embraces Kim Jong-un, a dictator for the sake of a photo op. Putin, you want to talk about
Senator
Russia?
Harris, we're going to
He takes the word of the Russian president over
No
the word
plan.
of the
I mean,
American
this is the weakest answer
when it
for
comes
him.
to a threat to our
Thank you,
democracy and our elections.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
These are the issues that are before us, Chuck.
I hear you. Thank you, Senator Harris. Mayor Buttigieg, in your climate plan, if you're elected president in your first term, how is this going to help farmers impacted by climate change in the Midwest?
Well, the reality is we need to begin adapting right away, but we also can't skip a beat on preventing climate change from getting even worse. It's why we need aggressive and ambitious measures. It's why we need to do a carbon tax and dividend. But I would propose we do it in a way that is rebated out to the American people in a progressive fashion so that most Americans are made more than whole. This isn't theoretical for us in South Bend either. Parts of California on fire. Right here in Florida, they're talking about sea level rise. Well, in Indiana, I had to activate the Emergency Operations Center of our city twice in less than 2 years. The first time was a 1,000-year flood, and the next time was a 500-year flood. This is not just happening on the Arctic ice caps. This is happening in the middle of the country, and we've got to be dramatically more aggressive moving forward. Now, here's what very few people talk about. First of all, rural America can be part of the solution instead of being told they're part of the problem.
This is
With
good.
the right kind of soil management and other kind of investments, rural America could be a huge part of how we get this done. And secondly, we've got to look to the leadership of local communities. You know, there's networks of mayors and cities from around the world who have come together, not even waiting for our national governments to catch up. We should have a Pittsburgh summit where we bring them together as well as rejoining the Paris.
Thank you, members.
I want to bring Governor Hickenlooper into this for a moment. Governor, you have said that oil and gas companies should be a part of the solution on climate change. Lots of your colleagues on stage tonight have talked about moving away from fossil fuels entirely. Can oil and gas companies be real partners in this fight?
Well, I share the sense of urgency. I'm a scientist, so I recognize that we're within 10 or 12 years of actually, suffering irreversible damage. But guaranteeing everybody a government job is not going to get us there. So, socialism, and in that sense, is not the solution.
Here he goes.
We have to look at what really will make a difference. In Colorado, we're closing a couple of coal plants, replacing them with wind, solar, and batteries, and the monthly bills go down. We're building a network for electric vehicles. We are working with the oil and gas industry, and we created the first methane regulations in the country. Methane is 25 times worse than CO2. And then we've got to get to that last part. I mean, the industrial, heavy industry, we haven't seen the plans yet. If you look at the real problem, CO2, the worst polluters in CO2 is China, is the United States, and then it's concrete and its exhalation. And beyond that, I think we've got to recognize that only by bringing people together, businesses, nonprofits, and we can't demonize every business. We've got to bring them together to be part of this thing, because ultimately, if we're not able to do that, we will be doomed to failure. We have no way of doing this without bringing everyone together.
Thank you. Vice President Biden, on the issue of how you do this, Democrats are arguing robustly among themselves about what's the best way to tackle climate change. But if we're honest, many Republicans, including the president, are still not sure if they believe it is even a serious problem. So, are there significant ways you can cut carbon emissions if you have to do it with no support from Congress?
The answer is yes. Number one, in our administration, we built the largest wind farm in the world, the largest solar energy facility in the world. We drove down the competitive price of both of those renewable sources. I would immediately insist that we, in fact, build 500,000 recharging stations throughout the United States of America, working with governors, mayors, and others, so that we can go to a full electric vehicle future by the year 2020, or by the year 2030. I would make sure that we invested $400 million in new science and technology to be the exporter, not only of the green economy, but economy that can create millions of jobs. But I would immediately join the Paris Climate Accord. I would up the ante in that accord, which it calls for, because we make up 15% of the problem. 85% of the world makes up the rest. And so we have to have someone who knows how to corral the rest of the world, bring them together, and get something done like we did in our administration.
Senator Sanders, I want to give you 30 seconds to follow up, but I'm going to hold you to 30.
Look, the old ways are no longer relevant. The scientists tell us we have 12 years before there is irreparable damage to this planet. This is a global issue. What the President of the United States should do is not deny the reality of climate change, but tell the rest of the world that instead of spending $1.5 trillion on weapons of destruction, let us get together for the common enemy. And that is to transform the world's energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. The future of the planet rests on us doing that.
Before we go, hang on.
Before we leave this topic.
Here's the solution. Pass the torch. Pass the torch to the generation that's going to feel the effects of climate change. Pass the torch to the generation that's inventive enough.
Thank you both.
Before we leave this topic, here's something you all want to weigh in on. Hold on a moment. Hold one moment.
Just trust us on this.
Somebody has a younger body doesn't mean you don't have old ideas.
No, we didn't do it.
John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and maybe we can get a man on the moon. John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the
Meaningless
moon.
platitudes.
Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics included the people, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. And I have had a career not making the political plans, but I have had a career harnessing the inspiration and the motivation and the excitement of people, masses of people. When we know that when we say we are going to turn from a dirty economy to a clean economy,
She'll be out by
we're going to have a Green New Deal. We're going to create millions of jobs. We're going to do this within the next 12 years because I'm not interested in just winning the next election. We are interested in our grandchildren.
All right, we're going to sneak in a break in a minute, but before we go, I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only.
Good luck.
All right, please.
Really?
President Obama in his first year wanted to address both health care and climate. And he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was, obviously, health care. He didn't get to do climate change. You may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to push, you get one
over
shot.
Under 6 say climate change.
The only thing you get past.
Who takes the over?
What
Who
is
takes the
that
under?
first issue for your presidency? Eric Swalwell, you're first.
For Parkland, for Orlando, for every community affected by gun violence, ending gun violence.
Okay. Senator Bennett.
0 so far.
Climate change and the lack of economic mobility Bernie talks about.
Senator Gillibrand.
Passing a family bill of rights that includes a national paid leave plan, universal pre-K, affordable daycare, and making sure that women and families can thrive in the workplace.
The
no
under
matter
may
who they
win.
are.
Oh, I like that. Okay,
Senator
Harris. Then. So passing a middle class and working families tax cut.
Wow,
that's one.
DACA, guns.
Okay. I'm giving you credit for the first thing you said, the tax cut. I got you. Senator Sanders, first thing.
The premise that there's only 1 or 2 issues out there.
Reject the premise, please. This is the
enormous
best.
crises.
Senator Sanders.
A political
Reject
revolution.
the question.
People have got to stand up and take on the special interests. We can transform this country.
Fine. Vice President Biden, your first issue, Mr. Vice President.
I think you're so underestimating what Barack Obama did. He's the first man to bring together the entire world, 196 nations, to commit to deal with climate change immediately. So I don't buy that. But the first thing I would do is make sure that we defeat Donald Trump.
Okay.
Period.
Mayor Buttigieg,
You're in office, this does not happen.
Priority, your first issue as president that you were going to block and tackle.
We've got to fix our democracy before it's too late. Get that right. Climate, immigration, taxes, and every other issue gets better.
Okay, so climate, the under one.
I would pass a $1,000 freedom dividend for every American adult starting at age 18, which would speed us up on climate change, because if you get the boot off of people's throats, they'll focus on climate change much more clearly.
Governor Hickenlooper?
I would do a collaborative approach to climate change, and I would pronounce it well before the election to make sure we don't re-elect the worst president in American history.
And Ms. Williamson with the last word.
My first call is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you were so on, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world
and then
for
AT&T
a child
will
to
cut the
grow
phone
up.
line access for the White House.
You guys were close with the short, at least it was shorter responses.
Not at all.
All right. C minus.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with these candidates right after this.
Okay, so for me, it still hasn't changed. Kamala Harris is still winning this thing. I do think that Buttigieg is probably in second place. I'd like to say Bernie's in third in terms of performance, on the basis not of whether I agree with the policy, but on the basis of how these debates are judged. But I don't actually know that that's the case. Bennett actually probably had a better second hour so far than Bernie Sanders. Still about a quarter of this debate to go. If you have never watched anything on the David Pakman Show YouTube channel before, welcome, number one. We have about 16,000 people watching with us today. I estimate 80% of those people are not currently subscribers to the David Pakman Show. It's free to hit the subscribe button. We currently have 670,000 subscribers. If just a few of you are polite enough to hit that subscribe button, we could be well on our way to 680,000 subscribers this evening, which would be stunning and incredibly appreciated. Let me say thanks to some of the people that have continued to sign up using the coupon code mentioned over there. David Robbins is a new member. Jared Rogers has signed up. Thanks to Zach Christensen. Nicholas Spicuzza, Nicholas Ingara has signed up, Ramon Colmenero, Melanie Quintanar, Declan Desart is a new member, Alex Cash, Andrew Soanes, Andrew Stouffer, Ian Wilk is a new member, Clay Johnson. It's overwhelming. These are coming in almost faster than I can read them. Mohammed Ashraf, Gabriel Caban, Mike Kokavesis, I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly, Timothy Bradenstein, Mary Takahashi, Sean Story is a new member, Kasim Mian, Samara Bean, Michael Hurt has signed up. People asking me what it is that I'm looking at. I'll actually take, if people want, let me do an Instagram story right now and I'll put it up just so you can see what it is that I am looking at here. So I'll just record a few seconds. I have all my various monitors and my notes down below, and then just it's monitors everywhere, quite frankly. So I'll put this up right now if you want to follow me on Instagram at david.pacman just to see what it is that I am seeing during this debate. Okay, that's done. A lot of requests for that. Phone calls. I will open the phone lines. As soon as this thing ends, I'm going to open up the phone lines, okay? I've been teasing it long enough. We've had just a deluge of new members. The phone number to call in and tell me what you think of the debate, who won, who lost, 617-830-4750. Okay, make a note, 617-830-4750. We will open the phone lines as soon as this is done. I think it's possible Andrew Yang is done after tonight, unfortunately. I thought that if he got to participate, he could pop to 3 or 4%. He's spoken 4 times. I mean, it's not going, they're just not giving him an opportunity, as they are not giving an opportunity to Marianne Williamson and a whole bunch of other people. People asking, what is the coupon code to sign up for membership? It's right there. It's on screen. This is 2020, saves you 40%. There's a hidden secret coupon code, which will save you 50%, and that's HALF19, HALF 19. Also available, and it all counts, okay? Go to patreon.com/DavidPacmanShow and throw in $1 a month. It's all appreciated. Down below, there's a button that says join. We've gotten, must be several dozen new YouTube subscribers during the live stream so far. So those are much appreciated as well. And remember, we are closing in on 700,000 YouTube subscribers. If you're not currently subscribed, right below, just hit the subscribe button. We have surpassed 671,000. Let's get to 672 by the end of the evening. I think we can do it. Let's get back to the debate.
Debate in Miami. We're going to continue the questioning now with Lester in the audience. We are in a second.
Another audio issue would be delightful.
Lester in the audience, but that was just a fake out.
Let's go. We're going to go to the issue of guns and
Congressman Swalwell. Among this field of candidates, you have a unique position on gun reform. You're proposing that the government should buy back every assault weapon in America, and it should be mandatory. How do you envision that working, especially in states where gun rights are a strong flashpoint?
Keep your pistols, keep your rifles, keep your shotguns, but we can take the most dangerous weapons from the most dangerous people.
Yeah, most of the crime is not committed with those.
We have the NRA on the ropes because of the moms, because of the Brady Group, because of Giffords, because of March for Our Lives. But I'm the only candidate on this stage calling for a ban and buyback of every single assault weapon in America. I've seen the plans of the other candidates here. They would all leave 15 million assault weapons in our communities. They wouldn't do a single thing to save a single life in Parkland. I'll approach this issue as a prosecutor. I'll approach it as the only person on this stage who has voted and passed background checks, but also as a parent of a generation who sends our children to school where we look at what they're wearing so we can remember it in case we have to identify them later. A generation who has seen thousands of black children killed in our streets.
Almost
and a
lost the
generation
talking
who goes
point
to the theater and we actually look where the fire exits are. We don't have to live this way. We must be a country who loves our children more than we love our guns.
Senator Sanders, a Vermont newspaper, Senator Sanders, a Vermont newspaper recently released portions of an interview you gave in 2013 in which you said, quote, "My own view on guns is everything being equal, states should make those decisions."
No.
Has your thinking changed since then? Do you now think there's a federal role to play?
That's a mischaracterization
2016 all over again.
It's a
Look,
quote of
we
you.
have a gun crisis right now. 40,000 people a year are getting killed. In 1988, Rachel, when it wasn't popular, I ran on a platform of banning assault weapons and, in fact, lost that race for Congress. I have a D- voting record from the NRA.
Proudly.
And I believe that what we need is comprehensive gun legislation that, among other things, provides universal background. We end the gun show loophole. We end the straw man provision. And I believed in 1988, and I believe today.
Why would you
that
leave
assault weapons are weapons from the military, and that they should not be on the streets of America.
You would leave, your plan leaves them on the streets. You leave 15 million on the streets.
We banned the sale and distribution, and that's what I believe for many years.
Will you buy them back?
If people want to buy, if the government wants to do that, and people want to,
you're going to be the government.
Yes.
Will you buy them back?
Yes.
Senator Harris, we're going to give you 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think your idea is a great one, Congressman Swalwell, and I will say that there are a lot of great ideas. The problem is Congress has not had the courage to act, which is why when elected President of the United States, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together, bring all these good ideas together, and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I will take executive action, and I will put in place the most comprehensive background check policy we've had. I will require the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law, and I will ban by executive order the importation of assault weapons. Because I'm going to tell you, as a prosecutor, I have seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you. I have hugged more mothers who are the mothers of homicide victims, and I have attended more police officer funerals. It is enough. It is enough. There have been plenty of good ideas from members of the United States Congress. There's been no action. As president, I will take action.
Mayor
Super
Buttigieg,
smart. She can't do a lot of that stuff by herself, but it's specific and it sounds good, and she's smart to say it.
Shorthanded as military-style weapons. You are the only person on this stage tonight with military experience as a veteran of the Afghanistan war. Will military families, does that inform your thinking on this view? Do you believe that military families or America's veterans will, at large, have a different take on this than the other Americans who we've been talking about and who Congressman Swalwell is appealing to with his buyback program?
Yeah, of course, because we trained on some of these kinds of weapons. Look, every part of my life experience informs this. Being the mayor of a city where the worst part of the job is dealing with violence, we lose as many as were lost at Parkland every 2 or 3 years in my city alone. And this is tearing communities apart. If more guns made us safer, we'd be the safest country on earth. It doesn't work that way. And common sense measures like universal background checks can't seem to get delivered by Washington, even when most Republicans, let alone most Americans, agree it's the right thing to do. And as somebody who trained on weapons of war, I can tell you that there are weapons that have absolutely no place in American cities or neighborhoods in peacetime, ever.
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds.
A real 30 seconds?
A real 30 seconds.
Okay. I'm the only person that's beaten the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that got the Brady bill passed, the background checks, number one. Number two, we increased that background check during the Obama-Biden administration. I'm also the only guy that got assault weapons banned, and the number of clips in a gun banned. And so, folks, look, and I would buy back those weapons. We already started talking about that. We tried to get it done. I think it can be done, and it should be demanded that we do it, and that's a good expenditure of money. And lastly, we should have smart guns. No gun should be able to be sold unless your biometric measure could pull that trigger. It's within our right to do that. We can do that. Our enemy is the gun manufacturers, not the NRA. The gun manufacturer.
Well, NRA represents the manufacturer.
Lester Holt has our next question. Lester, take it away.
All right, Chuck, this is a question from our viewers. We put some suggestions that asked maybe they could share some. Here's one that came from Kathleen from Canby, Oregon, who writes, many fear the current administration has inflicted irrevocable harm on our governing institutions and norms, and in the process on our reputation abroad. The question is, what do you see as important early steps in reversing the damage done? And we'll put this one to Senator Bennett.
Thank you very much. What an excellent question. First of all, we have to restore our democracy at home. The rest of the world is looking for us for leadership. We have a president who doesn't believe in the rule of law. He doesn't believe in freedom of the press. He doesn't believe in independent judiciary. He believes in the corruption that he's brought to Washington, D.C., and that is what we have to change, and that's why everybody is up here tonight, and I appreciate the fact that they're up here for that reason. Second, we've got to restore the relationships that he's destroyed with our allies, not just in Europe. He flew to the G20 last night and attacked Japan, Germany, and a third ally of ours without saying anything about North Korea or Russia. And when you've got a situation where you have a president who says something happened in the Straits of Hormuz and the whole world doesn't know whether to believe it or not, that is a huge problem when it comes to the national security of the United States of America.
This is a perfect
and we
time.
Need to change that.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. It's a perfect time for me to do another one of these down the line. And this is what this question is, which is you're likely going to have to reset a relationship between America and another country or entity if you become president perhaps because of some relationship that you just mentioned about President Trump. What is the first relationship you like to reset as president? I'm going to go down the line, and I'll start with Ms. Williamson.
Well, one of my first phone calls would be to call the European leaders and say, we're back. Because I totally understand how important it is that the United States be part of the Western Alliance.
I'm trying to get one or two words here. I hear you. Governor Hickenlooper.
You know, I talk about constant engagement.
Name a
country. And I think the first country I would go to, and I understand they've been cheating and stealing intellectual property, would be China. Because if we're going to deal with public health pandemics, if we're going to deal with all the challenges of the globe, we've got to have relationships with everyone.
Mr. Yang, we're trying to squeeze in a couple more things before we go to another break. Mr. Yang.
China, we need to cooperate with them on climate change, AI, and other issues. North Korea.
Thanks for the quickness. Mayor Buttigieg.
We have no idea which of our most
Yang's
important
too polite.
allies
He's
he will
actually
have pissed
playing by
off
the rules,
worse
and
between now
he's getting
and then.
hurt. But
what we know is that our relationship with the entire world needs to change, and it starts by modeling American values at home.
Okay, Mr. Vice President, I'm trying to be quick.
We know NATO will fall apart if he's elected 4 more years as the single most consequential alliance in the history of the United States.
Senator Sanders.
It's not one country. I think it is rebuilding trust in the United Nations and understand that we can solve conflicts without war, but with diplomacy.
Senator Harris.
All the members of the NATO alliance.
Senator Gillibrand.
President Trump is hell-bent on starting a war with Iran. My first act will be to engage Iran to stabilize the Middle East and make sure we do not start an unwanted, never-ending war.
Senator Bennett, quickly.
Our European allies in every Latin American country that's willing to have a conversation about how to deal with the refugee crisis.
And Congressman Swalwell.
My first act in foreign policy, we're breaking up with Russia and making up with NATO.
Thank you all. Thank you all. We have one
That's a good plan.
last question for Vice President Biden tonight. You have made your decades of experience in foreign policy a pillar of your campaign. But when the time came to say yes or no on one of the most consequential foreign policy decisions of the last century, you voted for the Iraq war. You have since said you regret that vote. But why should voters trust your judgment when it comes to making a decision about taking the country to war?
Because he's older and smarter now.
Because once Bush abused that power, what happened was we got elected after that. I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq, and my son was one of them. I also think we should not have combat troops in Afghanistan. It's long overdue. It should end. And thirdly, I believe that you're not going to find anybody who has pulled together more of alliances to deal with what is the real stateless threat out there. We cannot go it alone in terms of dealing with terrorism. So I'd eliminate the act that allowed us to go into war and not the AUMF, and make sure that it could only be used for what its intent was, and that is to go after terrorists, but never do it alone. That's why we have to repair our alliances. We put together 65 countries to make sure we dealt with ISIS in Iraq and other places. That's what I would do. That's what I have done, and I know how to do it.
Senator Sanders.
Not terrible, but not great.
One of the differences that Joe and I have in our record is Joe voted for that war. I helped lead the opposition to that war,
Strong
which is a
Bernie
total
moment.
disaster. Second of all, I helped lead the effort for the first time to utilize the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, which is the most horrific humanitarian disaster on earth. And thirdly,
strong moment.
Let me be very clear. I will do everything I can to prevent a war with Iran, which would be far worse than disastrous war with
Senator
Iraq.
Sanders, thank you.
All right, guys. Informed consent of the American people.
Good news is you get more time to talk, but I have to sneak in one more break. We will be right back with more debate.
Okay, so Bernie is actually coming on strong now towards the end. He has not been great. I still think Kamala Harris is the one who benefits the most from this, particularly if she can close with a strong closing statement. And given her prosecutorial experience, I am sure she is going to close with a very strong closing statement. But Bernie now is actually in the running with Buttigieg sort of for second place in this thing. I'm getting a ton of messages from people saying the David Pakman Show website is down and they can't sign up for membership. The website has been completely overwhelmed by new members. I have rebooted the website and it seems to be running and much more quickly now. So that has been done. I want to say thanks to Kaylee Hively and David Levitt and Remy Deviat, Abhishek Vasu, and Charlie Chuck Mullenix, Kyle Gallup, Charles Fernandez, Albert Directo, David Robbins, I mentioned already. Very, very excited to see all of those names coming in. Also, if you are watching today and you are not a subscriber to the David Pakman Show YouTube channel, we have 671,000 subscribers. I would love to earn your subscription as well. If you've enjoyed the commentary, or even if you just have enjoyed the stream and you'd rather me not talk much, but you appreciate that we're here doing this, hit the subscribe button down below. Last time I mentioned this, the subscriber number popped by like 400. So please hit that subscribe button. I know a lot of the 16,000 of you are not currently subscribers to the show. And if you really want to see things get crazy and you're new to the David Pakman Show, as soon as this debate ends, I'm opening the phone lines at 617-830-4750. I'll mention it a few minutes before the debate wraps so people can start calling in. I will take phone calls. It could be trolls. It could be people who disagree with me, agree with me, whatever. We are going to hear from some of the folks in the audience. The number will be 617-830-4750. And I do hope that you stick around for that. But still, I guess there's probably one more topic and then maybe closing statements, although maybe they'll go right to closing statements. Hit that subscribe button. Use the info right there to sign up for a membership. People who are wondering what my streaming setup is, I have a story right now on my Instagram account at david.pakman. Check it out. It's the only story I think that's up right now, and you can see the various, the array of screens that is in front of me and what I'm looking at and the chat and all of these different things. I just posted that. And we will get back to the debate, the last few minutes of this part B of debate 1.
Will have a final chance to make their case to the voters. 45 seconds each.
Final
we begin with Congressman Swalwell.
We can't be a forward-looking party if we look to the past for our leadership. I'm a congressman, but also a father of a 2-year-old and an infant. When I'm not changing diapers, I'm changing Washington. Most of the time, the diapers smell better. I went to Congress at 31, and I found a Washington that doesn't work for people like you and me. It's made of the rich and the disconnected. I was the first in my family to go to college and have student loan debt. And so I have led the effort to elect the next generation of members of Congress. And we have a moment to seize. This is a can-do generation. This is the generation that will end climate chaos. This is the generation that will solve student loan debt. And this is the generation that will say enough is enough and end gun violence. This generation demands bold solutions. That's why I'm running for president.
Congressman, thank you.
Ms. Williamson, 45 seconds for your closing
I'm sorry we haven't talked more tonight about how we're going to beat Donald Trump.
No, that's good. We should talk about issues.
Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and sir, love will win.
And on that note, she will be out of the race within 7 days. I am opening the phone lines now if people want to call in and be placed on hold.
My mom and her parents came to the United States to rebuild their shattered lives in the only country that they could. 300 years before that, my parents' family came searching religious freedom here. The ability for one generation to do better than the next is now severely at risk in the United States, especially among children living in poverty like the ones I used to work for in the Denver public schools. That's why I'm running for president. I've had 2 tough races in Colorado by bringing people together, not by making empty promises. And I believe we need to build a broad coalition of Americans to beat Donald Trump, end the corruption in Washington, and build a new era of American democracy and American opportunity. This is going to be hard to do, but it's what our parents would have expected. It's what our kids deserve. I hope you'll join me in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor Hickenlooper.
I'm a small business owner who brought that same scrappy spirit to make Colorado one of the most progressive states in America. We expanded reproductive health to reduce teenage abortion by 64%. We were the first state to legalize marijuana, and we transformed our justice system in the process. We passed universal background checks in a purple state. We got to near universal health care coverage. We attacked climate change with the toughest methane regulations in the country, and for the last 3 years, we've been the #1 economy in America. You don't need big government to do big things. I know that because I'm the one person up here who's actually done the big progressive things everyone else is talking about. If we turn towards socialism, we run the risk of helping to re-elect the worst president in American history.
Again?
Thank you, Governor.
Wow, what a dumb statement.
You have the floor for 45 seconds.
Women in America are on fire. We've marched, we've organized, we've run for office, and we've won. But our rights are under attack like never before by President Trump and the Republicans who want to repeal Roe v. Wade, which is why I went to the front lines in Georgia to fight for them. As president, I will take on the fights that no one else will. I stood up to the Pentagon and repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I've stood up to the banks and voted against the bailout twice. I've stood up to Trump more than any other senator in the U.S. Senate. And I have the most comprehensive approach for getting money out of politics with publicly funded elections to deal with political corruption. Now is not the time to play it safe. Now is not the time to be afraid of firsts. We need a president who will take on the big challenges, even if she stands alone. Join me in fighting for this.
Senator Gillibrand, thank you.
Mr. Yang, you have 45 seconds for your closing.
First, I want to thank everyone who put me on this stage tonight. I am proof that our democracy still works. Democrats and Americans around the country have one question for their nominee, and that is who can beat Donald Trump in 2020? That is the right question. And the right candidate to beat Donald Trump will be solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected and will have a vision of a trickle-up economy that is already drawing thousands of disaffected Trump voters, conservatives, independents, and libertarians, as well as Democrats and progressives. I am that candidate. I can build a much broader coalition to beat Donald Trump.
I would have worded it that way,
It is not left. It is not right. It is forward. And that is where I'll take the country in 2020.
Mr. Yang, thank you.
Senator Harris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I just want to leave you with a couple of things. One, we need a nominee who has the ability to prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, and I will do that. Second, this election is about you. This is about your hopes and your dreams and your fears and what wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's why I have what I call a 3 a.m. agenda. That is about everything from what we need to do to deliver health care to how you will be able to pay the bills by the end of the month. And when I think about what our country needs, I promise you I will be a president who leads with a sense of dignity, with honesty, speaking the truth, and giving the American family all that they need to get through the end of the month in a way that allows them to prosper. So I hope to earn your support. Please join us at KamalaHarris.org.
Senator, thank you.
Her closing statement, arguably the weakest part of the night for Kamala.
Nothing about politics is theoretical for me. I've had the experience of writing a letter to my family, putting it in an envelope marked just in case, and leaving it where they would know where to find it in case I didn't come back from Afghanistan. I have the experience of being in a marriage that exists by the grace of a single vote on the U.S. Supreme Court. I have the experience of guiding a community where the per capita income was below $20,000 when I took office into a brighter future. I'm running because the decisions we make in the next 3 or 4 years are going to decide how the next 30 or 40 go. And when I get to the current age of the current president in the year 2055, I want to be able to look back on these years and say my generation delivered climate solutions, racial equality, and an end to endless war. Help me deliver that new generation to Washington before it's too late.
Thank you. Senator Sanders,
better closing.
5 seconds, the floor is yours.
I suspect people all over the country who are watching this debate are saying, these are good people, they have great ideas. But how come nothing really changes? How come for the last 45 years wages have been stagnant for the middle class? How come we have the highest rate of childhood poverty? How come 45 million people still have student debt? How come 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America? And here is the answer. Nothing will change unless we have the guts to take on Wall Street, the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the military-industrial complex, and the fossil fuel industry. If we don't have the guts to take them on, we'll continue to have plans, we'll continue to have talk, and the rich will get richer, and everybody else will be struggling.
Thank you, Senator.
Solid.
And lastly, we'll hear from Vice President Biden. Sir, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you very much. I'm going to lead this country because I think it's important we restore the soul of this nation. This president has ripped it out. It's the only president in our history who has equated racist and white supremacists with ordinary and decent people. He's the only president who has engaged and embraced dictators and thumbed their nose at our allies. I'm secondly running for president because I think we have to restore the backbone of America, the poor and hardworking middle-class people. You can't do that without replacing them with the dignity they once had. Lastly, we got to unite the United States of America as much as anybody says we can. If we do, there's not a single thing the American people can't do. This is the United States of America. We can do anything if we're together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Vice President Biden, thank you.
Disjointed, I'm not going to lie. Confused.
We've had 2 nights of spirited debate on a range of issues, 20 candidates in all. We want to thank all of the candidates last night.
Seriously, it takes guts to run and stick your neck out like this to you guys and to the 10 last night. Thanks for having the guts to do this.
I would also like to thank the audience for completely ignoring our suggestion not to react. We made it a lot more fun.
Also, thanks to the Democratic National Committee and the Florida Democratic Party.
And, of course, thank you to everyone at the Adrian R. Center for hosting us here and our terrific audiences. Chuck mentioned.
Over terrific.
For Savannah, Jose, Chuck, and Rachel.
All right, so let's get right to the phones and see what's on people's minds. 617-830-4750. I said I would take calls, and I am going to. So people can start calling in now. I'm just going to get myself onto the phone system. It looks like there's already 40 or 50 people holding. But we will get to a variety of different people. Before you leave, hit the subscribe button. Subscribe on YouTube, okay? Thanks to the probably in total with the rollover 30 or 40,000 people that watched this live stream. 617-830-4750 is the number to call to talk to me right now. The website has been reset, so if you are trying to get a membership, it should be back up and running. I know it was down for a little bit. Let's just get right to the phones and see what people think here. We'll start with our caller from the 816 area code. Who's calling today from 816? Go ahead.
This is Jordan.
Hey,
and,
Jordan.
I'm wondering, I was a Yang supporter or whatever, and I'm wondering, can Yang come back from this lackluster performance? And,
I don't know, man.
Could you tell him to, speak up and not follow the rules?
Yeah, I know. I was actually tweeting during this thing, and a bunch of people were retweeting it saying, well, he is being too polite. And This was his shot, you know, and I don't know that this is Andrew Yang needed to get to 3 or 4% as a result of this debate, and I don't know that this performance gets him to 3 or 4%. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean,
All right, man. Thank you. Great for checking in. Appreciate the call. Let's see. I mean, let's just to do it because we haven't heard from him for a while. Let's get Jimmy from Philly on the phone and see what is on his mind. Jimmy from Philly, what's going on? Jimmy from Philly.
David, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
David, how are you?
You must be drunk. It's 11, right?
No, I'm not drunk.
Oh, all right.
You know why I like out of all this?
Sorry,
Yang,
what was
'cause
it?
he wants to give me $1,000 a month.
1,000?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you're voting Yang?
Isn't that what he said? $1,000 a month, right?
1,000.
I love him.
So you're voting Yang?
No, I'm not voting for Yang.
Oh, okay.
I'm voting for Trump.
All right. How many beers
But
have you
out
had,
of all the
Jimmy?
candidates,
Yeah.
he's the only one that makes any sense because he's talking about giving me cash.
Okay, so you like free stuff is what you're saying.
I like cash.
And has Trump given you any?
Yeah, I got a raise this year.
Trump gave you the raise. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Jimmy, how many beers have you had?
Earlier, I had a few, but
Yeah.
you know.
How many? I mean, like, how many would you say?
I don't know. I had a few vodka drinks too, so it's kind
Okay.
of tough to tell.
Yeah. How many of those 12 percenters do you think you had?
I didn't have any of them.
Oh, all right. Okay, Jimmy, very
No.
good. Anything else on the agenda?
You know, none of those clowns are going to beat Trump.
Very good. Okay.
Just not going to happen. It's not going to happen, David. You know it. Everybody knows it. Biden's the front runner. It doesn't matter what Biden says or does.
Yep.
He's going to be the nominee. And Biden was a joke tonight. Let's face
But,
it.
you know,
I mean,
you and I agree. Biden did not do well tonight. And I wouldn't be surprised if Biden is not leading the polls 2 weeks from today because his performance was truly not good.
I mean, I liked Bernie, but Bernie isn't the one that they want. So
Right. Well, we'll see. Okay, Jimmy, very good. Good to hear from you. I'm sure you've got
All
an
right,
early day
David, good talking to
landscaping
you.
and all of that stuff. So we will we'll let you go. All right, Jimmy, very good. Jimmy from Philly. Let's see who else we've got here. Let's go to I don't know. I mean, I'm just going crazy here with area codes. Let's try the something's up with the phone system. There's almost like too many people holding. Let's try the 561 area code. Who's calling today from 561?
Hello? Me?
Yes, that's you.
Am I live?
You're
oh my
live right
God,
now.
yes. Hello, David Packman. This is great. So basically, I have a question. It's
Okay.
not really relating to the debate, but I called way before, and it was I think it was mentioned on your interview with the Joe Rogan show, and it was about that tweet of that one woman who tried to get you fired from Boston College because you tweeted that it's not progressive to vote for someone or not vote for someone based off of their race, gender, whatever. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Just for
I said that excluding candidates merely because of their race or gender is not progressive, and she tried to get me fired from Boston College for saying that.
Right. So what you said on the Joe Rogan show, it implied that what she was saying was racist. And I called asking what you thought about that because racism isn't applicable to white people. And I really wanted to hear your thoughts on that because, yeah.
Who says you can't be racist against white people?
Well, okay, we have to really take a look at what racism is, because if we're going by the definition that it's discriminating or seeing a race as above or below another, that's a very skewed definition, where racism should be examining the social, economic, and political system. And within this nation and other Anglo-Saxon nations, there's only one group, the in-group, which are white people, that have the political, socio-economic power to oppress people
No,
of
totally
color
disagree
as a
with you. I
group.
think that's a losing that's a losing redefinition of racism. You can be there's no question that power dynamics are really important in thinking about whether racism translates into structural oppression. But you can be racist no matter what your race is, and no matter what other people's race is. I think it's
But
what you're
why do
saying
you
is
see it?
extremely
But why do you,
problematic.
but why is my definition problematic when it takes into account the historical implications of what white people as a group have done to oppress people of color?
It's just
Like,
not.
what
It's
is
just
your
not the right.
definition
It's
of
just
racism?
not accurate. The first definition you
But
gave is
what
the
is
right one,
accurate?
and so I think there's two things.
But why is
A
that
white,
accurate?
because it's not what racism means. You're coming up with a new definition. It's like if I said,
But
I'm
I'm
going
not
to
coming up with a
hold
new
on a second.
definition.
Well, you've presented another definition, right?
And I think I'm presenting the most accurate and holistic definition of racism.
And that's what. So for you, the most accurate definition of racism is one in which no one can be racist against white people. Is that what you're saying?
That's I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
That's
that.
what you said.
What
That's how you
I'm
started the
saying,
conversation. You said you can't be
I
racist
started
against
the
white people
conversation.
in
You
Western
can't be
Anglo-Saxon
racist against.
countries.
You can't be racist, at least in this nation. In this nation specifically, because that's what I've studied with racism. This nation specifically, you can't be racist to white people because people of color don't have the power.
Okay,
as
hold on a
group
second.
to
Just
be
hold on 1 second, okay? Let's just take it. Let's build it up. If a Hispanic person says, "I don't like white people because they're white," is that racist?
No, it's not racist. However,
Hold on a second. How is
however,
that not
it's
racist? No,
racially.
however, just how is it not racist?
It's not racist because I can't say Hispanic because Hispanic is an ethnicity. So I understand what you mean by, let's say, person of color. A person of color cannot be racist towards a white person because they don't have the power.
Okay,
as
all right,
the
fine.
out
So
group to be
we're
racist.
going through. Just indulge me. If a person of color says, "I don't like white people because of their whiteness," that's not racist according to you. If
It's
a
not
hold on,
racist. It's
if a
racially
company
bigoted.
says, "We are not going to hire white people at this company," is that racist?
Yeah, it's racially bigoted. It's racially bigoted.
All right.
Racially, like I think it's
The
important
slice
to
of the
really.
left that you represent is very small, but it is extremely problematic, and I completely disagree with you.
Okay, David, or Mr. Packman, however I want to address you. I follow you because I think you're really reasonable, and I subscribe to you, and I think it's great what you do.
And what you're saying is extraordinarily unreasonable. Trust in my reason, then.
However, what I'm saying is not like some conspiracy theorist,
No, it's not.
left-wing
It's just
niche
wrong.
idea. It's not wrong because we have people studying race and racism for decades, and anthropologists have come together to
You're
come to
just
this
wrong.
conclusion that
Listen, hold on a
racism
second.
is prejudice for power.
I'm a Hispanic immigrant to this country. If I said
Yes,
I
but
am
you
going
are a
to
white
enact it,
Hispanic
hold on a
immigrant.
second.
You are a white.
If you really want to get down into ethnicity, I'm actually Ashkenazi, but this is why this is so stupid. If I say, no matter what my race is, if I'm white, if I'm Hispanic, if I'm Ashkenazi, if I said the David Pakman Show is not going to hire white people as a policy because I just don't like having white people around, that is racist by any definition of the word, and any deviation from that is completely counterproductive.
It's racially prejudiced, but racism needs to take the holistic definition of prejudice plus power.
Listen,
and
now
I
you're
think
just
that's
playing.
something
Now
that-
you're just playing semantic games. I'm going to let you go because the
But
audience, I
it's
think, is tuning out. But you're just wrong. I would urge you to rethink your views, and I hope that does not infect any of the Democratic candidates' dialogue, because that is what you're saying is a disaster. It's extraordinarily damaging, and fortunately, I don't think it's super prevalent because what you're saying doesn't make any sense. Okay. Wow. I mean, I'm shocked by that. Okay, let's try another call. Let's go to the 224 area code. Who's calling today from 224?
Hello.
Yeah. That's you.
My name is Rome. I'm calling from the Chicago area.
Hey, Rome, what's going on?
Who would you say it was? what do you think Bernie should have done to perform better in this debate?
I mean, listen, part of it is just he got some questions that were not the best suited questions to him. So like Elizabeth Warren was lucky yesterday because the questions she got were very well suited to her strengths. Bernie was a little bit low energy. I would have just liked to see him a little more proactive. I don't think Bernie did poorly, but he was just sort of low energy. He didn't get the best questions for him, but he did have a strong closing. And I can't imagine, I don't think he did any harm to his campaign, maybe a little bit actually. But I think that it was just sort of a low energy evening for him.
All right, thank you.
All right, very good. Let's see, who else do we have here? Let's try the 405 area code. Who's calling today from 405?
Hey, what's up, man? It's Laramie.
Hey, Laramie, what's going on?
Oh, not too much, man. The last two debates, okay?
Yep.
I've only agreed with two things said, and it was closing statements.
Okay.
It was nuclear threat is the most prevalent threat to the United States. Okay?
Yep.
No matter which country that comes from. Or, and what Bernie Sanders said today, that we had to take on the military-industrial complex and the stock markets.
Okay.
Because the people who are running this country have all the money, and they persecute us for lesser things than what they do. They kill millions of people with, like, bad prescription medications and getting them addicted to alcohol and cigarettes and all that stuff.
Right.
I would like to have your opinion on what would be the best candidate to represent those issues.
Well, I mean, it depends on what your approach is to dealing with those issues. A lot of what you're mentioning falls under public health and the healthcare system. And I think that Bernie and Warren are very strong on that particular issue. If you think that the issues you're bringing up are more law enforcement issues, then maybe the candidate's someone else. I don't know. But I'm hearing that mostly those are public health issues.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, I just wanted to tell you one more thing, bud.
Yeah.
God loves you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate
I'll see
that.
you, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's see. Where do we want to go next? Let's go to the 913 area code. Who's calling today from 913?
Hello?
Yeah, that's you.
Is it me?
That's you.
Awesome. So my question for you, and excuse me for a second because I just lost it.
Okay.
I'm nervous.
No problem.
So my question for you is, do you feel that in the entirety of his campaign, Andrew Yang is a strong candidate for making America a better place for us? Not necessarily in the polls or if he's going to win, but what is your opinion on Andrew Yang's policies and what he could do for us?
I think Andrew Yang is pretty strong on domestic policy, although I disagree with the way he would implement some of his ideas. And I've interviewed him 3 times and I've talked to him about that. That's no secret. I've not been super impressed by Andrew Yang's foreign policy credentials and sort of chops, but he's also not talked about that too much. And yesterday I was tweeting back to him to something he tweeted, and I said, people end up in these debates often looking stupid on foreign policy. He didn't end up really having to address that too much, but I can't really say on foreign policy whether Andrew Yang would be whether he would be good or not good or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Could I make one more question, or
yeah, sure.
Or do you want to move on?
No, go ahead.
So, do you think that corruption in our government, i.e., giving lobbyists lobbying for certain ideals and companies giving politicians a ton of money,
yeah,
do you think that level of corruption in our country is a major issue and we need to address it?
Corruption is a major issue in the United States, but it's an issue in a different way than it's an issue in, for example, what you might see in, I don't even want to give another example because I don't want to single any country out, but the institutions in the United States are less corrupt in many ways than in many less developed countries, including some countries in Latin America and Africa. And you know, some people will know which countries those are. But that doesn't mean that there is not just an inherent, completely corrosive and toxic cronyism and status quo bias that is terrible in different ways than the type of overt corruption that exists in other countries. So it's different. I think it's not as bad in many ways, but it doesn't mean that it should be ignored or it's not a problem.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe to the David Pakman Show YouTube channel. It takes 1 second to click subscribe down below. It's really great for us. We've been getting crushed lately by YouTube's algorithm, and bringing in a bunch of new subscribers really helps us, and it costs you nothing. Let's go to our caller from the 920 area code. Who's calling today from 920? 920? You there? 920 is gone. Okay. Let's try our caller from the 567 area code. Who's calling today from 567?
Is that me?
Yeah, that's you.
Hey, David. This is Ethan from Ohio.
How you doing, Ethan? What's going on?
Good. I was wondering, do you think that it was calculated on Kamala Harris's part to sort of go after Joe Biden? And do you also think Joe Biden's sort of downfall in the debate was inevitable?
I don't think Joe Biden's downfall was inevitable. I am actually wondering whether, he seemed to be having a weird speech thing going on where his speech seemed slow and a little bit like that thing Trump had happen, the God bless the United States of America stuff. I don't know what's going on with Joe Biden. Something weird was going on. So that's one question. I do think Kamala Harris probably knew ahead of time at some point she was going to go after Joe Biden on the race stuff. I think it worked for her. I mean, listen, yesterday when Beto O'Rourke was asked what should the top marginal tax rate be, and he said nuestra democracia, I think it was a totally disastrous, disingenuous, planned thing to do. Kamala Harris probably had this plan of at some point bringing this up with Biden. She did it at a time that seemed relatively natural, and it went pretty well for her, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure. Great. Thank you for calling in. Appreciate it. Okay, let's go to the 210 area code. 210 is a historically very dangerous area code for this show. 210, what's going on?
Hello?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay, cool. Hi. I'm a longtime subscriber, first time member. I'm a little nervous, but
no problem.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's kind of funny that you said like 210 is dangerous. But yeah, I'm from, my name's Fernando, and I'm from Texas.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it kind of makes sense. And yeah, I agree with you on the Beto O'Rourke messing up. And I was just wondering, what was your which Democratic candidate do you think has the strongest foreign policy?
Foreign policy. It really depends on what region you're talking about. So I think that, like, for example, Julian Castro is really strong on Central and Latin America and immigration in a way that many other candidates are not. When it comes to,
yes, I agree.
I don't know, when it comes to China, I think that Elizabeth Warren has some very good ideas. And, interestingly, I think this is a little wacky, but Delaney yesterday, even though he basically imploded, like, he seemed to actually have some foreign policy knowledge that was relevant. I don't know. I'd really have to think about it bigger picture in terms of in which area do I think each candidate is the strongest.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to say that, like, I feel like the big winners, from my opinion, is definitely Kamala Harris and I want to say Buttigieg, honestly. I don't know how to pronounce
from tonight,
his name,
you're
but
saying?
Yeah, from tonight. And then
Yeah.
as well as Elizabeth Warren and Julian Castro.
That's the way I have it. Yesterday, I had it Warren, Castro, and de Blasio as the three top performers. Again, this is like not based on what I like them to say about the policies I like. This is just the way I think these things are evaluated. And tonight, I think Harris is the definite winner. Buttigieg probably number 2, maybe tied with Bernie. And then I don't know where I go next. I actually thought Bennett, even though he said some really wacky things, had some strong moments, although he's got no chance and should probably get out of the race immediately. There were a lot of weak performers tonight.
Yeah. I felt like the first night was way stronger in terms of like people putting out their ideas and policies. And just tonight was just a lot of platitudes. It was just a lot of appealing to feelings, in my opinion.
I agree with you. All right. Thanks very much. Great to hear from you. Hope to hear from you again, and really appreciate the phone call. Okay. 210 is gone. All right. Let's do something different. Let's see if we can conference in a few viewers with each other. So let's see. Let me bring in, oh, this should be interesting. Let me bring on Val from Agawam first. Val, are you with us tonight?
Hi, David. How you doing?
Hey, Val. What's going on?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. So stand by with me. I'm going to add into the feed here. We've not done this before, just because it's a very special night. Let's add in Brody from Dallas.
Oh, okay, great.
Brody, can you hear me?
David, I can hear you.
Brody and Val, two past callers to the David Pakman Show. Please, Val, I want you to take the question from Brody, and let's see what he had to say today. Brody, go ahead.
My question actually comes down to how are we going to phrase and give our message about that the overall cost to benefit ratio with regards to healthcare that I think Bernie stumbled on a little bit. He kind of said, hey, we are going to raise taxes, but he didn't make it clear enough that, look, this is going to cost you less in the long run and be better for you.
Right.
So, Val, I want to know, how do we get our messaging on point? Because you know, those Republicans they're going to...
Very good question. Val, can you address this issue? How can we better explain how this Medicare for All thing should be discussed?
Brody, is it?
Yes, it's Brody.
Yes,
okay. Brody, these are my thoughts. I thought Bernie was a little bit too polite tonight. I've seen many of his rallies, and he does go into a lot of depth about how to handle the costs of Medicare, and he talks about the other countries of the world that have systems where it's single payer and where their healthcare is better and it isn't costing them as much. And I was a little surprised he didn't go into more detail tonight. I think that would be the best thing to do.
Of all the times that you've heard him, how easily is he able to distill that, though?
The times that I've heard him, like I said, have been at rallies. I wish he sort of maybe would have pretended in his mind that he was at a rally and not a debate, and maybe he would have been not as timid about it.
Interesting.
I don't know. David, have you seen any of his rallies?
I've seen Bernie be much clearer about this whole thing of, listen, there will be a tax, but the tax will be way smaller than all of the things you're already paying for, including premiums and your employer part. I just think he was less clear about it. Let's do this. Let's bring in Sebastian to see if he can shed insight into Brody's question to Val. Sebastian, have you been listening to this, and what do you think about what they're saying?
This is awesome.
Yeah. I don't really have much to add on this. I think I agree with what both of you said.
You do? Okay.
Do you guys think that we should take an angle of, like, there's a hidden tax, like, because there is a hidden tax of not having.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. It must have skipped when I got connected. Then I didn't hear that part.
Oh dear. Okay, that's interesting. You know, I think the only solution to this is that we pull Vivek in. Vivek, what do you think about Sebastian's opinion about how Val handled the question from Brody?
Oh dang! I didn't expect to be called in like this.
Hi, Vivek.
Hey, what's up? So as far as Bernie's appeal is concerned, that's what we're talking about, right? Like how he can appeal better?
Yes. How can he better explain that there will be a tax for Medicare for all, but it's a net savings overall?
Yeah, I think he should lead off by saying, like, it's a net savings. I think the way that he went about addressing some of the questions, like, for example, the one where they asked him, like, what is the one policy you'd put into place, like, right now, if you're president? It sounded like he was kind of trying to dodge the questions, and I don't think that's the best strategy. He should start off just by saying, I think, the way that, like, Kyle Kalinske would say, he would just say, like, it saves money. It saves money for the American people. And then, like, go over briefly on how it does that.
Yeah, I would just open. I would say, listen, this is a net savings. We're taking away a bunch of costs. We're adding a small payroll tax. And overall, we're going to be saving a lot of money because this is going to be a system that overall is going to reduce the cost for caring for each person over the course of a year or something like that.
What about equating it like this and starting out saying, look, with the current system, you pay more and you get less. And with Medicare for all or a universal system, it's the opposite. Like, should we approach it from that angle? Because
Ooh, I think
there is
that
what, like 70%.
that's interesting, but I
Like
feel like it's
70.
just like we want to make it as simple as possible, and that's not the simplest possible way to talk about it.
That is true.
Sebastian, are you pleased with the direction of this conversation?
Well, I actually wanted to ask you something about the show, if that's all right.
Okay, go ahead. So let me see. Brody, great to hear from you. We're gonna let Brody go. Val, always great to hear from you, and appreciate the phone call from Val. And Vivek, you're still on with me, but let's hear from Sebastian's question here.
¿Te puedo preguntarlo en español?
Okay, yeah, I'll translate, but go ahead.
Ok, pues ya que se celebraron los debates en castellano, quería que lo más adecuado sería hablarte en este idioma.
Sí.
Creo que hace un par de días mencionaste que tienes ganas de traerse el programa y ponerle subtítulos para que tengas más influencia al extranjero, para que los que no hablan inglés oigan lo que tú tienes que decir. Y bueno, yo soy quintilingüe y además del castellano soy hablante nativo del inglés. Hice mis formaciones primaria y secundaria enteramente en francés, ya que soy canadiense, soy graduado universitario, licenciado en el ruso, me enseñé el árabe cuando tenía 15 años, hace ahora 12 años, y quería preguntarte cómo solicitaría un trabajo y que le pediría muy poco dinero, digamos, no es un sueldo mínimo.
Okay, Vivek, do you want to handle this one?
Oh, should I give like a better response and respond in like broken Spanish, or I took it in like 8th grade?
Yeah, just say nuestra democracia, like Beto yesterday. No, so Sebastian's interested in the project we have to do bilingual dubbing of the David Pakman Show. We're thinking there's a very interesting project going on at a university. I don't even know if it's public, where a machine learning system can take the captions from the David Pakman Show in English and spit out an audio track in a bunch of other languages. And it's pretty good. And my mouth moves and you hear Spanish or you hear Japanese, or the two that I've seen so far. So right now, Sebastian was asking about a job and that he would work for very cheap. Right now, it's crazy because it's automation. It would be a computer program that would be doing that. So there's not currently any jobs available. But if there are, we always announce it on the show and list it on the website.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Sebastian, thank you. Appreciate the phone call. Okay, and then Vivek, what was actually the topic of your phone call?
Well, I mean, I did take a class on machine learning, so if you want me to do that, you could pay me $10 million and I'll do it.
Okay.
So, yeah, as far as my question, so considering like the results of the debate tonight, it was no secret that Kamala did really well and Biden didn't do very well.
Yes.
Do you think that there's like a chance that the DNC might actually get behind Kamala and like abandon Joe Biden? And if so, like how would Bernie best combat her?
I don't think that the DNC anytime soon is going to abandon Biden, but I think before Biden was running, it seemed as though Kamala was sort of the de facto establishment DNC anointed candidate. And I think that if Joe Biden, I hope he's not having a health issue, but something was very strange from what was going on today. If he starts dropping in the polls or whatever, I do believe that Kamala is probably the default for the DNC. Or Buttigieg. Buttigieg has reportedly been attending the Stop Bernie meetings that insiders in the DNC, big Democratic donors rather, have been having. So I think it's Buttigieg or Kamala.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, like Biden looked like he was about to start crying when he was being berated by Kamala. So I was just thinking, like maybe if he dropped out or something to save face.
Really,
and,
not
like,
a good
how
night
would
for
Bernie
Biden.
fight against Kamala?
Yeah, I don't know that we need to worry about what Bernie's strategy would be, because I think that the DNC shifting from Biden to Kamala, if Biden starts declining, is going to be terrible for the establishment candidate, whoever it ends up being. And I think in that interim, Bernie and probably Warren would pick up a lot of polling support anyway. So I don't even know that we have to think about it as how would Bernie fight Kamala. I think if the DNC abandons Biden and goes to someone else, that in and of itself will be very damaging for whoever that candidate is.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, Vivek, appreciate it. Great to hear from you. We currently have something like 90 people holding, and this is probably, we pay for everybody who's holding, and we probably have spent several $100s in this evening taking phone calls. And I've got to go to bed because we've got a Friday show. So we're going to wrap. Thanks to everybody who joined me. Hugely successful stream, dozens of new members. A lot of very, very crazy stuff went on, but we will definitely continue streaming live debates, and I'll be back with full analysis of the David Pakman Show of the debate on the David Pakman Show tomorrow. Before you leave, hit that subscribe button down below. Really helps us on the path to 700,000 subscribers.